Okay, good morning all. Right. So today we'll be starting your semester 3 sessions. So first I will give you the overview of your subjects. Then today we will be starting. So we'll be doing 2 subjects each rotationally. Okay. So rather than doing four subjects in the day. So first I will give you the overview of your subjects and what type of subjects are those and what is the expectation so that you can plan out your studies. So it's very important that you plan out your studies, okay? So that you achieve your objectives. So then we will move on to 2 of the subject, object-oriented analysis and design and data structures and algorithm, okay? So let me open. So these are the semester 3 subjects. So you have 5 subjects. Actually, I would say this is one of the easiest semester in your BIT. Very relatively easy semester, with you can do it with relatively less effort if you rely on your understanding. Because I told you that, so if level 1 is something like this much of effort is needed, level 2 lesser, level 3 even lesser, right? So now you are into the middle level where you need less effort, right? Less effort. But only thing is you must be more and more serious. So small things, but you have to spend more time on those small things to understand. Okay, so that is the idea, right? So you have 5 subjects, 1 EN subject, communication skills 2, and you know that if you fail communication skill 2, you can't go into the next level. So therefore, take it very seriously. Otherwise, you will waste another year, right? So then you have the object-oriented analysis and design. So this is a very easy subject if you have done your semester 1 programming subject properly. But anyway, don't worry. We will be doing actually this is the smallest subject. So therefore, we will be spending little bit of time doing a refreshing of your object-oriented concepts. Then we will do this in a very quick manner. Okay. So 100% you must rely on your understanding, and this is super important if you want to go into software development field, because 90% of the software develop using object-oriented concepts. Okay. So this will basically cement your object-oriented programming skills and knowledge, right? So this will make you that now you have some idea about object-oriented programming. So this will make it sort of a very strong. Okay. So then you have the data structures and algorithm. So this is a programming subject, and this is programming subject. So this is, earlier we call this programming 2, but now we call it data structures and algorithm, because this is not programming 2 actually. This is data structures and algorithm. Anyway, we'll be discussing about this subject because anyway we are going to do these 2 subjects today. Okay. So this is, we are going to learn about some data structures and algorithms in order to make you more familiar with problem solving, because software developers are doing problem solving. Okay. So you will be given more and more tools, more and more approaches in solving real world problems when you learn more and more data structures and more algorithms. Okay. So the 4th subject is data management. So this is basically continuation your database subject in semester 2. So you had database in semester 2. This is something like part 2 of the database. They have just given it a different name, but basically part 2 of database. And I would say this is the hardest subject, right? Hardest subject. So make sure you pay a lot of attention to these middle subjects: data structures and algorithm, data management system. Okay, so those are small subjects, but you need to be serious. And of course, the 5th subject is web development 2. That is continuation of web development 1 in your semester 1. But here we are more interested in server side. So content wise, little bit bigger, but it's not that difficult if you understand the concepts. Okay. Right. So those are the topics, subjects. So make sure that you pass your communication skills. Otherwise, you have to stay in this level for another year. So this is easy subject, but make sure you study it well so that you understand the concept, so that if you want to go into software development field, and of course when you're doing a final year project, right? So remember, in next year you have to do final year project. Okay. So in final year, a lot of students get stuck. So one of the reason is, of course, they have not done their programming subject properly. They haven't done their web development subject properly if it is a web application. And another reason is they have not taken the subject seriously, object-oriented analysis and design. So therefore, they can't analyze a system and design a solution. So if you can't design, how can you develop a system? Okay, so those are for your final year project wise, this is super important subject. Okay, right. So if you have any questions, you can ask at any time. Okay, so because now you guys are in level 2, so you must have the confidence. That is why you are attending these sessions. That is why you are in level 2, and you know that there is only very small number of students in level 1 are in level 2, because that is deliberately the university, they do that because they want to make sure that only the students with the relevant qualities are in the level 2. Right. So let's straight away move on to the data structure, object-oriented analysis and design. Okay. So I have shared the notes related to today's session under object-oriented analysis and design. So if there is any document which asks you for password, use, but usually there won't be, but if there is any document, use either try Aurora or else Aurora Computer Studies. And studies as one word, okay? But I hope I removed almost all the password protected things. But if there's anything missing, just use, if this is not working, try the second one, okay? Right. So let's first, so the notes for the today's session is available here under object-oriented analysis and design. So we will be going through OOP basics, abstraction, encapsulation, association, inheritance. Okay. I will be taking a lot of time here because I know that once you understand these things properly, the rest of the stuff is just a piece of cake, right? So it doesn't take much time, right? Actually, it doesn't take much time. We can do at least 2 topics per day, and we can finish it within few days, okay? But if you have a very good understanding about the concepts, okay? So we will not be doing anything new here, but we are going to look at those things you learn in your semester 1 in a little bit. Now you are a little bit more matured, right? We are going to look at those things in a little bit more serious manner, okay? Right. So that is the idea. Okay, let me go through the syllabus first. Object-oriented analysis and design. So the syllabus is also available in the Google Classroom. Syllabus. And the 2 reference books are also there, ebooks. Okay. Right. So the aim of the course is to provide necessary skills and competencies to analyze and design. Remember, software development, first we have to analyze and understand the system. So then we have to design the solution. Okay. Using object-oriented approach. So we are only concentrating on how to do this in object-oriented way, not the structured way. Okay. So intended learning outcomes. Describe the object-oriented analysis and design concepts, applying them to solve problems. Okay. Define UML, so modeling language, and its various types of diagrams like class diagrams, sequence diagrams, and so on. Prepare object-oriented analysis and design documents for a given problem using unified modeling language. Okay, so you must be able to, given a scenario, you must be able to analyze and come up with a use case diagram, and then when you're designing, come up with a class diagram, sequence diagram, and so on, which are used in software development, in real world software development. So explain the transition from analysis to design. Right? Explain the transition from analysis to design. Once you understand the problem, you have to design it. So how do you bridge that? Okay, sometimes two different set of people involved in, but these days, most of the time, the same set of people, professionals involved in analysis and design. So therefore, it's not a big thing, but you have to change your mindset. Describe the key activities in component-based software engineering. So we will look at it later because you know that even the hardware level computer is component-based. We have set of components fixed together using the motherboard, right? Hard disk, OSSD, processor, RAM, ROM, and so on connected together. So we use this similar approach in software development also. We tend to develop software set of components and integrated through well-defined interfaces so that it's more reusable, maintainable, and so on. So we will be looking at how to do that also. So those are some objectives of this particular subject. So at the end, make sure you achieve those objectives. Right? So remember, at the end, it's not you passed your subjects. At the end, do you have the confidence to go into the industry? Right? So that is what matters at the end, right? Because this is private sector. Software development, IT field is private sector oriented, right? You can, if you go anywhere in the world, right? So make sure you collect those skills and confidence so that you can face the world. Okay, right. So today we will be looking at basically the first part, system concepts and object modeling. What is a class, what is object, what is messaging, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and dynamic binding, and a little bit of introduction to UML. Actually, we will be only concentrating on this topic today because I told you we will spend more time here because we can do the rest of the stuff in no time. In no time. So someone who has understand the object-oriented concepts, drawing a class diagram is not a big thing. Drawing a sequence diagram is not a big thing. Okay. Drawing a collaboration diagram, communication diagram, right? State diagram is not a big thing. So these are basically modeling other diagrams, right? Modeling other diagrams. So therefore, we will be spending a lot of time here, and we will cover some of these concepts also today. Okay. Today we will be covering those things so that we don't have to do it again in the topic 6. Okay. Right. So that is the idea. Okay. Right. So let's start. So make sure you are very serious about these topics and try to finish it in the class itself. So don't think that I have to wait until the exams are nearing and I can do this. But the easier thing is just you understand it in the class itself. And if you have any questions, you clarify it. Right? Anytime you can ask questions and you just enjoy your life. Right? Don't make it a headache for you. Right? Of course, I don't think that IT is a headache. If IT is a headache, you must not be doing a IT degree. Okay, so I came in the IT field because IT is it's not a headache for me. It's something I really like. So I hope it is the same for you guys, right? So why do you want to do something you don't like? Right, so let's move on to our basics of object-oriented concepts. Okay, so all these things you have done in your semester 1. All these things, nothing new. But only thing is we will just revisit those concepts in a little bit high level manner. Okay. Right. So the notes I'm using is basically these 4 notes: OP basics, OP abstraction, encapsulation, and data hiding, OP association, OP inheritance. Okay, so there's one more note to add here, which I will be which I will add later. That is in polymorphism. Okay, right. If you haven't got the Google Classroom access, right, so just send me a message. If you have done your installment 1 to full payment, you must have got the Google Classroom access. Of course, if you did the registration yesterday afternoon, may not be, because the list was updated yesterday morning. Otherwise, you must have got the invitation mail. Okay, right. So let's move on to the object-oriented basics. Right. So we all know that there are two ways we can develop software. What are the two ways we can develop software? Anyone? So why don't you talk a little, because you are now in level 2. What are the two different ways, approaches we use in developing software? So these are open questions. So different people.
Structured way and object-oriented.
Object-oriented, yes. Structured way and object-oriented way. Right. So there is one classification: structured software development, object-oriented software development. There's another classification. If you look at it from completely different point of view, what is that classification? But you have to look at it in a completely different way. Completely different approaches again. It's not approaches, basically, the way we look at the software development. So that is non-AI based, non-AI software development and AI software development. Right. So that is again two different things. So we have not touched AI based software development. Okay. But when it comes to conventional software development, like you want to develop a accounting system, student management system, inventory management system, of course you don't need AI. You can go for non-AI, right? Because it's more into the user interfaces and business rules and so on. So in that case, yes, we go for either structured programming or object-oriented programming, right? Even when you have AI programming, if you want to have, of course, you will be having some sort of user interfaces and so on. So that part you can go for structured or object-oriented, but business logic processing will be using completely different concepts. So we will be focusing on non-AI object-oriented approach, because structured approach, nothing much to learn. So if someone asks what are the, because we are now moving to the object-oriented software development, object-oriented concepts, let's finish it up. If someone asks what is mean by structured software development, do you have an answer? Anyone? So I'm not expecting perfect. There's nothing called perfect answer, because there are two approaches. Now we are moving to the second approach. So let's make a පොඩ්ඩක් මතක් කරලා යන්න ඉතින් නැත්නම් කළගුණ සැලකීමක් විදියට. What is mean by structured software development?
So in object-oriented programming, we consider about the component and relationships. In structured way, we don't consider about those things. Only we consider about the structure, not the component.
What do you mean by consider about the structure? That is not very good answer yet. If anyone can make it better answer, the word itself is there. You have to concentrate on structured. Okay. Structured. Sequence manner. No. So that is now the issue is you have confused with software development methodologies and software development methods. Software development methodologies is completely different concept. That is whether we go for waterfall or sequential waterfall or iterative. That is completely different thing. So so that means you have completely mess up those two division. So think about it. Right? So that is why I want you to answer, so that I can get, if you have really mess up those things, we can make it clear. So there are two concepts: software development methodologies. Let me use a different color. That is why I want you to get into a discussion with me. Okay. So software development methodologies. software development methods or approach. So methodologies means how we do the software development. So there we subdivide it into sequential, iterative. So sequential is basically waterfall approach. Iterative can be RAP, okay, or rapid software development or spiral. And now the most widely used iterative approach is agile, or sometimes we call it agile as a third concept because there's a different philosophy also. Of course, it is iterative. That is one. That is soft. How do you approach software development? How you manage the software development process? Right. So that is how you manage the software development process. That is completely different area. That is what we cover in software engineering subject, right? And later we will cover that in agile software development in your semester 4, right? So that is different concept. Oh, we will look at those things in project management subject. So that is overall how you manage the software. So now I am interested in not this area. Now I am interested in how do you analyze and design your problem, so your solution. Right? So there the division is structured. If it is non-AI, structured software development, object-oriented software development. So therefore, so don't get confused. Right? I know that a lot of students get confused about these two. So now we are in this area. We are discussing these two approaches. Now my question is again, what is mean by structured software development? So every answer is valid answer because you can learn something, right? If you have any confusion, you can clarify it, and then your confusion is not there. That is what is expectation. So then you can go to interviews, right? With a lot of confidence. Right. Anyone? No. What is mean by structured programming? What is mean by structured software development? What is mean by object-oriented? Because our subject is object-oriented analysis and design. So you must be able to explain this approach and this approach using few or maybe just 2 sentences or few points. You must be able to differentiate this. What is this approach and what is this approach? Or few features. So these are the features of structured development. These are the features of object-oriented development. But once you mention those few features, someone must be able to fully understand the difference between. That is what you are supposed to have understood by now, because you are now in level 2. So in structured development, still I haven't got a proper answer or expected level answer. So in structured development, we solve the problem, or how you look at solving the problem. We have data, we want to process and get the output. Right? We have the input, we want to process and get the output or the information. So we want to process it. That is how you look at it. So therefore, simply we represent the data using variables and other concepts like arrays and so on. So then we apply operations on that data until we get our result. It's very simple approach. So when you apply operations, we can use control structures. That is how the structured came, right? Control structures, sequence, selection, repetition. Right? Sequentially, we apply these operations. Some operations we apply only conditionally if the condition is satisfied. Maybe else some other operations, or sometimes we apply those operations over and over until a particular condition satisfies. So we take the data, we represent the data, and then we apply operations using control structures to get our result. So that is what structured programming is. So this approach is super simple when you are developing simple systems. Okay, so that is what structured programming is. And structured programming is easy to learn, right? If you have learned programming, now you know that these days even kids learn programming, right? Even grade 6, 7 students learn programming. What they learn is structured programming. This simple approach, okay? This simple approach, and this approach is good when you are solving relatively simple problems. Relatively simple problems. But in the second approach, object-oriented approach, it's a completely different way of thinking. So how do you look at the system in object-oriented way? Can anyone tell me now? What is, because we did both in semester 1. How do you explain object-oriented approach? So what is our thinking? How do you think as a software developer? How do you look at the system? So as a software developer, if you are doing structured programming, I explain you how you look at the system. Now, if you are a software developer, if you want to develop your system using object-oriented way, similarly, can you explain how do you look at it? Because you did all those things in semester 1. Now there we have set of data. We apply operations using control structures to get the result. That is our thinking. Now here, what is our thinking? In object-oriented way. Our thinking. මේ විදියට තමයි තනිකර ගේම ගහන්නේ හිතන්න. So our thinking when you are doing object-oriented software development, our thinking is the system is set of objects. Set of objects. These set of objects communicate and collaborate. Right? So these objects communicate and collaborate. When they do that, the required functionalities are happening. Right? Required results are happening. So that is how you look at the system. Okay. So that is why we say these are two different approaches. Two different approaches. Right. So that is what object-oriented programming is, or object-oriented development is. Right. So the system process the data into information or the results with the help of operations and control structures. That is structured programming or structured software development. In object-oriented way, how do you look at the system? How do you look at this when you analyze, when you design, when you develop? We consider that there are a set of objects, communicate and collaborate to perform the system functionalities. So you can see the words are there, right? So here we have the word object. Here we have the structures. Okay, so what we look at in this subject is how to, if you are doing object-oriented development, how do you analyze it? How do you design it? And how do you develop it? Of course, how do you develop it? The concepts are already done. That is what we did in object-oriented programming. Okay. But now you look at in a very serious manner, level 2, right? Higher diploma level, right? Not in a primitive manner. Right. So structured approach is good because it's a very basic approach. It's very simple, faster to develop simple systems. Even a kid can be taught how to do structured programming. So that is why even grade 6, 7 students are taught structured programming. But it is less maintainable and reusable. Right. And also when it comes to complicated systems, this approach may be time wasting as well. But simple things, this approach is super. So therefore, for simple thing, don't use object-oriented. Use this. But when it comes to complicated systems, where you are looking for maintainability, reusability, long-term things, and it has so many functionalities, object-oriented approach might be the better solution. But if you apply it for the simple things, you will find that object-oriented is headache. So when you learn object-oriented concepts, one of the things that get into your mind is, this is very time-consuming. This approach is, we do things that we can do simply, we do it in a very complicated manner. So that is what you will get, you will feel when you learn object-oriented analysis, design, and development. That is because we are analyzing and designing and developing very simple things, obvious things. So for obvious things, of course, here structured approach is the best. But here we are analyzing and designing simple things. But when you go to the industry, when you go to the software development field, you don't develop hello world applications. You develop complete ERP systems, complete customer relationship management systems, complete accounting systems, complete banking systems. So they are very complicated. So in that kind of a situation, only you will appreciate the power of object-oriented concepts. And also you are thinking about maintaining that system for next 5 years, next 10 years. Okay. So that is, and also you want to integrate your system with other systems, collaborate with. So that is where the component-based software development comes. And in that kind of real world scenarios only, you will appreciate these object-oriented concepts. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Right. So when you're doing object-oriented analysis, design, or development, so I already mentioned you these points. So these concepts are not trivial. So therefore, you need extra focus. That is why at grade 6, 7, 8, you are not taught object-oriented, not even A-level ICT. Even in A-level ICT, we don't teach these students object-oriented programming. So we just touch it, but not in a serious manner. We don't even use the proper concepts. Okay. Because this is not that straightforward. Okay. So therefore, be serious. Be serious. Of course, I hope you guys are serious. That is why you are in level 2. Okay. So now you have to show that you are serious enough to go into level 3. And that means you are serious enough to understand these concepts. Okay. It's not memorizing. No, you can't memorize object-oriented concepts. Okay. You can't memorize data structures and algorithms. So now you will be 100% relying on your understanding. Right. So its time is over about your memory capacity. That is why I'm very, very, very critical about your semester 1 exams. In semester 1 exams, like web development and so on, they are checking your memory. අරක මතකද අර ටැග් එක මතකද මේ ටැග් එක මතකද එතන වෙන අවාසනාව තමයි මතක තියාගන්න කම්මැලි ස්ටුඩන්ට්ලා ඉන්නවා. ඉතා හොඳ මීටරේ දින. ඒගොල්ලෝ හැලෙනවා එතනදී. ඒගොල්ලෝ ෆ්‍රස්ට්‍රේට් වෙනවා. හරි. ඊට පස්සේ level 2 වලට ආවට පස්සේ තමයි චෙක් කරන්නේ ඔයාගේ thinking capacity. දැන් අර මතක තියාගන්න දක්ෂ කට්ටිය සමහරවිට මෙතනට ඇවිල්ලා. දැන් ඒගොල්ලෝ මෙතන හැලෙනවා ඊට පස්සේ. මේක හරි අසාධාරණ වැඩක්. semester 1 වල කරන්නත් තියුනේ ඔය වැඩේම තමයි මම නම් කියන්නේ. semester 1 වලත් කරන්න තියුනේ මතකේ චෙක් කරන්න නැතුව ඔයාලට කොච්චර යමක් complex දේවල් තේරුම් ගන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා චෙක් කරා නම් level 2 වලට එනවා හරියට මේ set එක. මම කියන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ එහෙම මේ අය කියලා. මම මෙතන දැන් එහෙම පොඩි conflict එකක් තියෙනවා. හරි. semester 1 විශේෂයෙන් web development subject එකේ එහෙම මතකද කියලා බලන්නේ. හරි. අර tag එක මතකද මේ tag එකේ අර attribute එක මතකද? ඒවට තේරෙයි ටිකක් ගියාම ඒක ඇති වැඩක් නැහැ. වැඩේ තියෙන්නේ ඔයාලට structured programming කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා තේරලා තියෙනවද? object oriented කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා තේරලා තියෙනවද? ඔයාලට system එකක් build කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? build කරන්නේ මතකෙන් නෙමෙයි. ඔයාලගේ talent එකේ. logical thinking. Right. Critical thinking. Right. So therefore, you need to be very serious about these things because these are not very trivial. And of course, you have to practice this. You have to do coding. The more you code, the more you understand and more you appreciate these concepts. But if you just read notes, it will do nothing. Right? And also, when you are doing object-oriented software development, you can't straight away go and code. First, you have to analyze and model it. Then you start developing. Of course, that is what we do as software developers in real-world software development. So you don't go and start coding in the day 1. Maybe about 1-2 months, we do analysis and design. We keep refining it. Maybe after 3 months, we start doing coding. Okay. Of course, we can start doing code in certain parts very upfront, but not everything. And the productivity of object-oriented systems is evident when you are developing complex systems. So therefore, when you are learning, you will find it a little bit boring, little bit, we do simple things in complex manner. It's something like when you want to just build a small wall, right? You don't take concrete mixture, right? Because it's just a small things. But when you're building a very 40-story building, so that is where the concrete mixture crane is handy. But if you take those things to the simple construction, yes, it's funny thing. So you are doing that funny thing when you're studying, okay? When you're studying, because you will be exposed to the real world, and there you will find those tools really handy, and you can't live without those, okay? Right, so when you are learning object-oriented concepts, so we can do it in 3 layers. We did this in semester 1 programming also. What are the 3 layers? First, you learn the object-oriented basic concepts, okay, or object-oriented basics. On top of that, on that understanding, you go into the next level concepts, core concepts, and then you go into the advanced concepts. Okay. So that is how you do it. Once you are really confident about these things, you go to the next level. Once you are really confident about these things, you go to the next level and start developing your systems. Right? But if you don't know what is messaging is, if you don't know what is the difference between object and class, so no point trying to understand inheritance. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. I told you object-oriented programming is not for kids. This is for professionals. So therefore, let's do a quick, we have done all these things, not the advanced concept, these things in semester 1. So now again, we are going to revisit in a single day and see whether you have got it. So this is a very good opportunity for you to double check whether you have got these concepts that you learn in semester 1. If you have any gaps, this is the time to fill it. If you have any doubts, this is the time to clear those doubts, because this is the last time we are talking about object-oriented concepts, right? So there is no other subject in your BIT degree where we talk about object-oriented concepts, because we have some other things to do: mobile development, enterprise application development. We can't learn object-oriented concepts forever. Okay. Right. So I told you, when you're developing software, if you go for object-oriented way, you have to do that in day 1. You analyze systems using object-oriented approaches, concepts. You design using object-oriented approaches. Of course, you develop, and testing is common. So there's nothing called structured system testing and object-oriented testing. So the testing part and the rest of the stuff is pretty much the common, whether you go for structured software development or object-oriented. But definitely these 3, you think in terms of objects, right? Think in terms of objects, even analysis. Right. So now let's look at the basics. This is just revision. Okay. So you have done these things. So what are the 3 things you must know as basics if you want to understand object-oriented software development? What is object? What is a class? What is meant by messaging? What is meant by association? Okay. So association we can look at a little bit later. But definitely you must know what is an object, what is a class. Okay. So can someone tell me, again, I don't expect perfect answers. You can make mistakes, right? So this is the place to make mistakes, right? Not when you are developing a software, when you are in an interview. Job interview එකේ mistake කරත් එහෙම ඒ job එකක් නැති වෙනවා. ආයි interview යනවා. Here you have the freedom, right? So can someone explain what is the difference between object and class? දැන් දන්න අය බය නැතුව කතා කරන්න. එතකොට අනිත් අයටත් හොඳයි ඒක. අනිත් අයගේ බය ටික ටික ඇරෙනවා. What is the difference between can you explain what is object, what is class, and how they are related? එහෙමනම් වැඩේ ඉවරයි එතකොට. ආයෙ එකෙන් බය වෙන්න දෙයක් නෑ මට. You are done. ඒකට උත්තරයක් තියෙනවා නම් හරි. ඒකට උත්තරයක් නැත්තම් තාම වැඩේ තේරෙලා නෑ මේක. Anyone?
So class is the parent entity and object is the child entity. It's mean class
Parent and child is not a good word.
In another way, we can tell
Yeah.
class makes the object.
Class
It's
makes
like
okay.
class act like the factory.
Yeah.
Suitable word is
Yeah,
factory
yeah.
for the
That is
object.
that. Maybe what do you mean by parent is also like that, because parent make the children, right? Yeah, maybe in that sense your answer
Yeah.
is okay.
Yeah, sir, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe in that sense, yeah, I accept your answer, because usually you use the parent and child for the inheritance also. Therefore, that is why I got confused. Yeah, so that is why we don't use the word parent and
Sir.
child, because there's another concept related to that. So therefore, the better example is
Yeah.
the factory example, because factory and
Sir.
product is not the product is not inherited from the factory. So therefore, when you give an example, try to give that kind of example where the other people don't get confused, because there's another concept that can help you with
Sir.
that. Okay. So yeah. So
Okay, sir.
that is part of the answer. That is actually the second part of the answer. What is object and what is class? So what is it? Can someone tell me the first part? So second part accepted. So we can use classes, or we can use a class to create objects. So therefore class act like a factory or blueprint. So that part is okay. Can you look at it from the other way now? So that is from class to object. Now, can you give me an answer from object to class? Because when you analyze the system, what you see is not classes. What you see is objects. So later we identify the classes, or later we model the classes. Okay. So therefore, now this is what we do in programming, right? At the runtime, your class act like a factory or blueprint to create objects. But when you are doing the analysis and design, you look at it in a different way, or you look at the same thing in the reverse of way. So because our subject is more analysis and design, so when you play the role of analysis and designer, analyst or designer, how do you see the connection between class and object? So that means you have to tell the same thing in a reverse order, but you have to use slightly different words. Because first you see is objects, not the classes. You can see customer object, student object, right? Payment objects, order objects, account objects. Yeah, so this is the first part. Class is a blueprint for the object. Or we can say class models set of similar objects. Right? So when you see set of objects, student objects, class objects, here when I say class, the whatever the education related class, okay? Payment objects. So to represent all these student objects, we can model a student class. To represent all the bank account objects, we can model a account class. To represent all the payment objects, we can model a payment class. So therefore, if someone asks what is the connection between object and class, one answer is, so the first part of the answer must be class represents or models set of similar objects. So all the student objects are modeled by student class. All the payment objects are modeled by payment class. So then the second part is, then someone will ask, why do you want to model a class like that? Because at runtime, when you are running the software, using the class, objects will be created. Because in real world, it's objects that does the work. Right? So if you can tell both, right? So that is perfect answer. Remember, when you go for interview, you must go there to get the job, right? I don't know. We don't want to get defeated. We don't want to get defeated. It's a shame for us. When you go for exams, I don't want to fail the exam. I want to pass it. If I go for a job interview, I don't want to be rejected. ඒක නිකන් රිජෙක්ට් කරාම නිකන් මගේ ගෞරවයට අප්සෙට් එකක් මට නම්. යකෝ මාව ගත්තේ නෑනේ මු. එහෙම කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? So therefore I try to give the best answer to make sure that I am the one who selected, not the others. Okay. Not the others. Of course, this world is full of competition. It's a competition, full of competition. I like competition. I don't care about it, right? For example, so as an institute, we are competing with other institutes. Right? ඔගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ matrix කියයි, ESOP කියයි, නේද? W3 schools කියයි. So who cares? Right? So that is good. So that always make us better. Competition is superb. Right? Competition is superb. So they are not enemies. So they always make us improve. But at the end, right? So competition is superb, but we want to be the number one, not them. Right? So therefore, they also try to do that. Right? So that is why the world is moving forward. That is why how the USA, right? අපේ මිනිස්සු යන්නේ කොහෙද? South Korea, Dubai, මේ දවස්වල Maldives, Singapore, මේ හැමතැනම තියෙනවද? ඔන්න සුන්දර competition එක තියෙන රටවල් වලට තමයි මිනිස්සු යන්නේ. ඒවා දියුණු වෙනවා. දියුණු වෙනවා. So therefore, try to give your best answer. Right? Try to build your best solution. Whatever you do. Okay? Of course, you can't be the number one or the best in all the aspect. මට උදාහරණයකට කවුරු හරි මට කිව්වොත් එimhe විහිළු කතාවක් කියන්න කියලා මට ලෝකෙ තියෙන ලස්සන විහිළු කතාවක් කියන්න බෑ. මට බෑ අර ජනයි ප්‍රියයි වගේ රකපාන්න. හොයා ගන්න අපිට හරියන ෆීල්ඩ් එකක්. අපිට හරියන ෆීල්ඩ් එක හොයාගෙන අපි එතන හොඳටම කරන්න ඕන. හොඳම solution. So therefore, what is a class? Class models or represents set of objects. Why? Because in the runtime we can create objects out of that class. So then those objects have all these features of that you model in the class. For different set of objects, we need a different class. You can't represent everything in the system by one class. All the payments, payment class. All the students, student class. Right? All the accounts, account class, and so on. Okay, so that is what class and object is. That's all. Okay, why වෙන කතන්දරයක් නැහැ. Okay. So then someone will ask, what are the things you are interested about modeling? Now you told me that you model set of objects using a class. So then someone will ask, what kind of things you model in your class? Or what kind of things of objects you model in your class? Anyone? What kind of things you model in your class? What kind of things of the objects you model in the class? Anyone? So just straightforward answer. මොනවාද model කරන්නේ class objects වල තියෙන? Right? What kind of things you model? දැන් මේවට උත්තර තියෙනවා නම් මම අද class එකේ අලුතින් උගන්වන්නේ නැහැ මේ දෝතියක් ආ. ඔයාලා semester 1 කරපු ටික පොඩ්ඩක් මතක් කරලා දෙනවා. හැබැයි ඒක මතකද නැද්ද කියලා ඔයගොල්ලෝ කදවල තට්ටු කරලා අහලා බලන්න. Right, attributes and behaviors, nothing else. So we are interested about the attributes of the objects, because if they are of same similar objects, they have the common attributes. Attributes of students are the same, whether it's student 1 or student 2 or student 3, but those attributes are different from account objects. Account objects have different attributes like balance, account number, whereas student objects have student ID, student name, and so on. So we model attributes and behaviors of objects, those common objects in the class. Okay. Right. So now we are moving to the, of course, then when we create an object, that object also have those attributes and behaviors. Okay. Right. So my next question is, what is messaging? මොකද මේවන් බේසික්ස් ටික දන්න කෙනාට ඊළඟ ලෙවල් එකට යන්න පුළුවන්. What is mean by messaging? What is mean by messaging? Anyone? Again, there's nothing called this is the answer, but try to give your best answer. Because whenever someone says object oriented, so they're talking about messaging. Right? So these days you can even go and ask something like Google, Chat GPT or whatever, right? සමහර ටිකක් messaging කියන වචනේ අඩුවෙන් පාවිච්චි කරා. නමුත් it's very important. So can you explain object oriented system in simple words. Simple. You can see the word objects, attributes, right? Methods. What else? Let's ask from Google Bard also. ඔයගොල්ලෝ කල්පනා කරන්න මොකද messaging කියන්නේ? Right? So these are not actually the basics. These are the next level things they are mentioning. Okay. So we'll go into these things later. Right? Classes, objects, and so on. ප්‍රධාන concept එකක message එක කියලා නෑ තාම හැබැයි යා. Right. Anyone? What is me messaging? What is me messaging? So messaging is one object calling behavior of another object. Okay. So messaging is a way of object to communicate with each other. When one object sends a message to another object, it is asking the object to perform a specific action. So I told you that in object-oriented approach, we consider that these objects are communicating and collaborating. So how do they communicate and collaborate? This object can pass a message to this object. So that means this object call a behavior of this object. Why? Maybe it needs that help. It needs that help to get something done, because one object may not do everything. So it does some things and rest it can get the help of another thing. It can get the help of another thing. Okay. So then maybe that object, when this object has something to do or get some help about from object 2, maybe some of these things are done by object 2. But again, it can ask object 5 to do a little bit of thing. So that is needed to do this guy's work. So that is how object-oriented systems work. So it's a collaboration between objects. So that is how object, when you are running a software, right? Object-oriented system is running. Say when you go to the ATM machine in the bank, right? So when you insert your ATM card and you want to do some borrows, you want to withdraw some money, or you want to do a money transfer. Oh, you don't have to go to the ATM machine. You log into your e-banking system and you want to do money transfer. Say you are doing the payment online. So this is what happens. So set of objects are created. That object is calling behavior of another object. That object is calling a behavior of another object. And at the end of those things, your transaction has happened. And that is what object-oriented software is. So what is messaging? One object calling behavior of another object is called messaging. Okay. As simple as that. If object call a behavior of another object, we say the first object has sent a message to the other object. Okay. So the third basic concept is association. What is mean by association? මේකත් අපි කතා කරා semester 1 වල. Can anyone explain what is mean by association? පාඩ තේරෙන විදිහට explain කරන්න. Association කියන වචනේ සාමාන්‍ය වචනේ තේරුම මොකද්ද? ආශ්‍රය කරනවා. නේ ආශ්‍රය කරනවා. ඔය යාළුවා ආශ්‍රය කරන්නේ අපි. ඒගොල්ලෝ ආශ්‍රය කරනවා එක්කෙනාට එක්කෙනා. පාඩ පේනද මෙයාව ආශ්‍රය කරනවා. but මෙයාත් එක්ක ආශ්‍රයයක් නැහැ. එනවා මෙයාත් එක්ක ආශ්‍රයයක් නැහැ. මෙයාත් එක්ක ආශ්‍රයයක් නැහැ. හැබැයි මෙයාත් එක්ක ආශ්‍රයයක් තියෙනවා. මෙයාත් එක්ක තියෙනවා. මෙයාත් එක්ක තියෙනවා. So what is the association? Now can someone explain association as object oriented concept, because we did it semester 1 also. So not every object can send message to every other object. Only some objects can send message to some other objects. So if an object can send a message to another object, that means those objects have association, or their classes, respective classes are associated, or there's association between those classes. If a class A is associated with class B, then objects of class A can call behaviors of object of class B. Otherwise, no. So there's another class called C, but there's no association. That means object of class A cannot call behaviors of object of class C directly. Simple as that. So do you think that it is, or do you have any questions about that? යෝගතා ඊට පස්සේ class diagram මෙහෙම කියලා අපි ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්නේ sequence diagram. ඒ වගේ තනිකර message passing තමයි අඳින්නේ. Sequence diagrams කියලා තියෙනවා, communication diagrams කියලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඕක ඔයා තනිය ඉගෙන ගන්න පුළුවන් ඒ diagrams ටික. අද මෙන්න මේ කතන්දරේ තේරුම් ගන්නකො. So this session is the most important session for this subject. අද session එකෙන් තමයි ඔයා තීරණය කරන්නේ මේක ඉස්සරහට තේරුම් ගන්නවද නැත්නම් කටපාඩම් කරනවද කියලා. හරි. ඊට පස්සේ final year ගියාට පස්සේ project class ඔය යනවා. We had the institute meetings last 2 weeks back. So the university is visiting each and every institute and discussing problems and what are the improvements needed and so on. So one of the questions they asked from us during the institute visit was, do you conduct project classes? Right? අපෙන් අහපු එක ප්‍රශ්නයක් තමයි, do you conduct project classes? So our straight answer is no. On principle, we don't conduct project classes because they know that lot of BIT students lot of BIT students, they are looking for project classes, which is a shame. ඒක ලැජ්ජ වෙන්න ඕන දෙයක්. Right? If you study 2 years and when it comes to final year project, if you are again looking for a class, that means you have not done your job. Maybe you have passed your exams, but you have not built up your competencies. You have not built up your confidence. So it's a complete failure. Actually, the university lecturers, they were really happy about our attitude. When I say, no, we don't conduct project classes on principle, so they were really happy. That is the way to go. Because you are not supposed to go to the project classes for your project. Project is something you have to do. You have to show your colors. You have to show that now I'm confident. Right? Not going නේද ඔළුව ගිනි අරගෙන එහෙ මෙහෙ දුවලා හරිනවද project class වලක. සමහර project class වෙනවා, සමහර project එක කරලා දෙන්න කෙනෙක් හොයනවා. ප්‍රසිද්ධියත් අහන මුන්ට ලැජ්ජාවක් කියලා එකක් තියෙනවා නඩු ගන්න. රෙදි ඇඳගෙනද ගිහිල්ලා අර forum වල අහන්නේ, Facebook වල ඒවා යහන්නේ. නේද? ඊට සල්ලි වල project කරලා දෙන්න set එකකුත් ඉන්නවා ඒකට. inbox එන්න කියනවා. project එකක් දෙන්නම් අපි ගාව තියෙනවා. So that is why in the project defense, they ask you to do code changes because the university knows the reality. Right. So therefore, what is association? Association means if a class A is associated with class B, then only object of class A and class B can pass messages. If there's no association between classes, there can't be any message passing between object of those classes. So that is what is mean by association. Now we are done with the basics. ඔන්න දැන් ඔය තුන දන්නවනම් අපිට ඊළඟ level එකට ගිහිල්ලා කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. මේ තුන ගැන මොන හරි වාට සැකයක් තියෙනවා නම් දැන් අහන්න ඕන. So that means what is an object, what is a class, what is messaging, what is mean by association or association relationship. Okay. Right. So now we have done. You can go through the note. Okay. Right. So for our ease of understanding, just for our ease of understanding, we can classify objects into 3 types. 3 types. That is, otherwise we sometimes we miss those objects. So when you are analyzing, we have to make sure that we don't miss any functionality. So that is why we have to do it in a formal manner and document it. So therefore, we can identify 3 types of objects. Some of objects will be living physical things like student, customer, employee, patient, or some other objects that we are interested in our system can be physical, living, non-living physical things like goods in a supermarket, vehicles, if it is a vehicle management system or rental system, vehicle rental system like Uber, right? Vehicles, machines, if it is inventory management system. And third one is conceptual. So this is the one that a lot of students completely miss it. Because object can be conceptual thing. For example, course, account, bank account, payment, order, reservation. So those are all objects. So object is anything that we are interested about the system, about the functionality. Yes, we are interested about the payments. Yes, we are interested about the order. Yes, we are interested about that reservation. So then it's an object or it's a class. So there's another word which is very close to the object and class. Can someone tell me what is that other word? කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන් තමයි අනිත් තුන්වෙනි වචනය object සහ class කියන වචන දෙකට ළඟින් යන අනිත් වචනේ. විශේෂයෙන් class කියන වචනෙන් ළඟින් යන තව වචනයක්. If someone asks, can you give me a word which is the according to your thinking, which is the closest to the word class? What is your answer? Anyone? I'm asking very open questions. That word we use in IT field. Anyone? You have learned that word. You have used that word extensively. What is that word? එක්කෙනෙක් වැරදි උත්තරයක් වුණාට කමක් නැහැ. ඔයාගේ හිතට එන වචනයක් තියෙනවා කියයි. ගිය සෙමෙස්ටර් එකේ පුරාවට අපි මේ වචනේ පාවිච්චි කරා. semester 2 වල. So that word is entity. Right? Entity. So entity, for example, customer is an entity. ER diagram මතකද? Customer, student, course, right? Payment. So you can see that most of the time your class and entities are the same. Not always, but most of the time. But there's a difference between entity and a class. What is that? දැන් ඔය ඊළඟට අහන්න ඕන ප්‍රශ්න තමයි. එතකොට ඔය දෙකේ වෙනසකුත් තියෙනවද? ඔය දෙක ගොඩ ළඟින් යනවා. ඔය දෙකේ වෙනසකුත් තියෙනවද? ඔය වෙනසකුත් තියෙනවා. What is the difference? We use the word entity in databases. We use the word class in programming. So what is the difference between those two words? Then දෙකම කරලා තියෙන්නේ programming කරා semester 1 වල semester 2 වල database කරා. දැන් ඒ වෙලාවේ ඔය දෙක compare කරන්න අපිට හදිස් වෙලාවක් තියුණා. ඒ වෙලාවේ හදිසියෙ database කර කර හිටියේ SQL කරන්න ඕන, normalization කරන්න ඕන. දැන් අපි full relax. දැන් අපි level 2 වලට ගියාම relax වෙනවා. level 3 වලට ගියාම කරන්න දෙයක් ඇත්තෙම නැහැ ඇත්තටම. හරි? කරන්න දෙයක් ඇත්තෙම නැහැ. ඒක තමයි උඩට යනකොට අපි වැඩ කරනවා නෙමෙයි අනිත් හරි වැඩේ තේරුම් ගත්තට පස්සේ අපිට මේ වැඩ පොඩි දේවල් බවට පත් වෙනවා. දැන් අර අපි කියන්නේ විවේක බුද්ධියෙන් පොඩි ඩිස්කෂන් එකක් කරන්න අපිට ඉතුරුලා තියෙනවා. Can someone tell me something that you see as a difference between entity and class? They are pretty much the same thing. So when it comes to entity, we are interested in attributes. මතකද අපි ER diagrams වල entity එකට දැම්මේ ඔක්කොම මොනවාද attributes තමයි. But when it comes to class, we are interested in two things, attributes and behaviors. ඔකට තමයි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියන්නේ. ඔකට තමයි ස්ටඩි කරනවා කියන්නේ. වෙන හවල් එකක් කරලා වැඩක් නැහැ ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියන්නේ. හරි. ඉගෙන ගන්න ආසාවක් තියෙන කට්ටිය හැබැයි ආසාවක් තියෙන ඉස්සරහට මේවා පාවිච්චි කරන්න හිතන් ඉන්න. හරි. So here we are only interested in attributes because that is something the word we use in databases. But this is where programming concept. So therefore we are interested in both attributes and behaviors. And messaging is calling behaviors. When the behaviors තමයි අනිත් object එකල call කරන්නේ සරින් සරින්. Right? So even conceptual things can have attributes and behaviors, right? For example, a bank account. So attributes can be account number, right? Balance, interest rate, whereas behaviors can be deposit, withdraw, and so on. Okay. So remember, in objects or classes, we are interested in both attributes and behaviors, whereas in entities, that is why we use a different word. There we are only interested in attribute, because database we don't mind about that behaviors. Right. So when it comes to object modeling classes, one of the biggest, it was a class diagram තමයි තියෙන්නේ. So එතෙන්දි මම මේවා explain කරන්නේ නැහැ. නිකන් class diagram එකේ notation එක කියන විතරයි මට තියෙන්නේ. So I cover a lot of things here. So when it comes to modeling a class, so one of the mistake is sometimes you are not very sure whether that behavior is a behavior of this class or that class. ඔක දැන් ඔයගලන්ට වෙන ලොකුම උටපටේ අලුත් කෙනෙක්ට. Experience of developers ලා අතර එහෙම කිසිම conflict එකක් නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ හරියටම කියනවා මේ behaviors යනවා මේ class එකට කියලා. මොකද ඒගොල්ලෝ තේරුම් අරගෙන ඉන්නේ ඕන. But when you are new to object oriented analysis and design, one of the confusion you get is it a behavior of this class or that class? Okay. Most of the time, what happens is you think that when this object call a behavior of this object, say X call a behavior of Y object. So sometimes what happens is you think that behavior is X. No, that behavior is in Y. X just call it. X just call it. So its behavior is with Y. X just call that behavior, or X message that behavior. So very good example is, so there's a driver, there's a car. So then we have a behavior called start. Is it a behavior of the driver class or car class? Car class එකේ behavior එකක්ද driver class එකේ behavior එකක්ද? So the start is a behavior of car class. Start, turn, accelerate, stop. So driver objects are just calling it. ඒක call කරන්න තමයි button එකක් හරි යතුරු දාලා කරකවන්නේ. යතුරු දාලා කරකවන්නේ driver object එක. හැබැයි behavior එක තියෙන්නේ වාහනේ. driver කරන්නේ මේක call කරන එක. නැත්නම් brake එක පා ගන්නවා කියන්නේ behavior is on the vehicle. In the vehicle, stop. The driver just call it. So turn, behavior is with the vehicle. The driver just call it using steering wheel. So therefore, one of the biggest mistake is, so sometimes you feel like the behavior is here. මොකද මේක driver ගේ behavior what is it? Driver drive කරනවා, driver turn කරනවා. හරි. හැබැයි ඇත්ත කතන්දරේ තමයි ඔක්කොම behaviors තියෙන මෙයා ගාව. මෙයා කරන්නේම call කරන එක විතරයි. driver කරන්නේ drive කරන එක. drive කරනකොට යාර අර message pass කරනවා. කාර් එකට. එතන driver නිකන් driver තියෙන අරයට message pass කරන්න විතරයි. driver නෙමෙයිනේ වාහනේ අරන් යන්නේ ගමනාන්තයට. ඔයා කාරේ කරේ තියාගෙන යනවා නම් අර ලුණු කිනියනවා වගේ ඔයා තමයි වැඩේ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක ඔයාගේ behavior. නමුත් වාහනේ behaviors ඔයා control කරන විතරයි කරන්නේ. වාහනේ තමයි ඔයා අරන් යන්නේ. So this is super important, right? Because sometimes this is tragedy, right? This is really tragedy. So sometimes the final year project. So සමහරව අහනවා මාව සුපර්වයිසර් කරන්නේ නැහැ ගොඩක් අය. ස්ටුඩන්ට්ලා මාව සුපර්වයිසර් විදිහට ගන්න නැහැ බොහෝ විදිහට. මොකද සමහර ස්ටුඩන්ට්ලා මම ගැන දන්නවා. හරි. මම ගැන දන්න ස්ටුඩන්ට් කෙනෙක් ලේසි මාව සුපර්වයිසර් විදිහට ගන්න නැහැ. හරි. ඉතින් කියනවා දැන් ක්ලාස් ඩයග්‍රෑම් එකේ වන්න කියලා. මොකද ක්ලාස් ඩයග්‍රෑම් එක මම අඳින්න ඕනේ නැහැ. සුපර්වයිසර් is not doing anything. Supervisor is supervising, helping. If you make a mistake, we can say there's a mistake. It doesn't mean that we have to correct that mistake at supervisor level. Supervisor is not doing anything. සමහරවිට ක්ලාස් ඩයග්‍රෑම් එක ගන්න කොහොම කියනවනේ අනේ තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. කොච්චරයි උත්තරේ? සර් මට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ ක්ලාස් ඩයග්‍රෑම් එක අරින්න. ඉතින් හත්තිලේ ක්ලාස් ඩයග්‍රෑම් අඳින්න තේරුන්නේ නැත්නම් ඔබ්ජෙක්ට් ඔරියන්ටඩ් ඇනාලිසිස් ඇන්ඩ් ඩිසයින් ක්ලාස් එකේ අහන්න එපා. අහලා තේරුම් ප්‍රශ්න කරලා ඒක තේරුම් ගන්න එපා ඒ දවසේ. හරි. අතනට ගියාම තේරුන්නේ නැත්නම් බම්බු ගන්න. තේරුන්නේ නැත්නම් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එක කරන්න නැතුව ඩිග්‍රී අතහැරලා දාලා යන්න. එච්චරයි. ෆයිනල් ඉයර් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එක කරලා තේරුන්නේ නැත්නම් මේ අද තමයි අහන්න ඕන. හරි. තේරුන්නේ නැහැ නෙමෙයි ගොඩක් අය ඇටිටියුඩ් ප්‍රශ්න තියෙන්නේ. මේ නිකන් සාහිතිකයක් එකතු කරගන්න ඩිග්‍රී කරනවා. So don't get into that mindset. Right. So therefore it's very important that you have to understand in which class should we model that behavior. Right. This is one of the biggest mistake that shouldn't get confused, right? When they do the modeling. If you don't do the modeling properly, you can do the development. Right. 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 So we discuss about what is class, what is object, and so on. Okay. So this is how you model. We give a name, we give the attribute names, and we give the behaviors of that class. Now you can see there's a big difference between structured programming and object-oriented programming. That is, in structured programming, attributes and behaviors are separated. So this is data, this is methods. අපි ඔයාලට කිව්වේ නිකම් methods කියලා. Methods එහෙම නැත්නම් functionalities. But in object-oriented programming, attributes and behaviors are, we use the word what? Into a class. කාටද මේ හිස්තැන පුරවන්න පුළුවන්? Listen to my sentence and you have to give me a word, suitable words to fill this blank. In structured programming, data and operations or behaviors are separated. Whereas in object-oriented approach, your data and behaviors are blank into a class. Can someone give me a proper answer, word for this? In object-oriented software development, your data and behaviors are, right? You have to give me the word into a class. Anyone? මොකක්ද උතන දාන්න පුළුවන් වචනේ? So we discuss all these things in semester 1 programming.
Encapsulate.
Yes, encapsulated. මෙන්න තියෙනවා capsule එක. මෙන්න මේ capsule එක දැන් දාලා තියෙන. දෙන්නවත් එකට දාලා හිර කරනවා. දෙන්නට වෙන වෙන දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඔය දෙක ಜಾති දෙකම තියෙනවනේ මෙන්න මේ class එක ඇතුලේ. Structured වල මේකවල විසිරුණා. data වෙනම යනවා, methods වෙනම යනවා. ඒතර තව දෙයක dataයි ඔක්කොම data ටික එක පැත්තක ඉන්නවා, ඔක්කොම behaviors ටික වෙනම කලවම් වෙලා ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි data ටික එකට ඉන්නවා. behaviors ටික එකට ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි dataයි behaviors කලවම් වෙලා. Sorry, separate වෙලා තියෙනවා. But here, data and related functionalities are encapsulated into one. ඒක හරියට අර කසාය වට්ටෝරුවක් සහ බෙහෙතක් වගේ. ඔයාලට බෙහෙත් වෙන වෙනම දෙන්නේ. මේ බෙහෙත් කරලා මේ බෙහෙත් කරලා මේ බෙහෙත් කරලා. කසාය වට්ටෝරුවේ ඔය ටික ඔක්කොම කලවමට දෙන්නේ. ඒක කලවමට දෙන්නේ මේ ඊට පස්සේ කියන්න පුළුවන් මේවා මේ ස්වභාවික දේවල් නෑ. ස්වභාවය ඒ ඇවිල්ලා අපි දන්නවා අර කරගන්න බැරි නම් මොන හරි හේතුවක් කියන්න බෑ. ස්වභාවික දේවල් හඳ නෙමෙයි මේක සෙපරේට් කරගන්න තරම් බුද්ධියක් නැහැ. හරියටම සංඝටකේ වෙන් කරලා ගන්න බෑ. වෙන් කරලා ගන්න බැරි යන්ත අර පොතුයි අනිත් පොතුයි අනිත් එකයි කී දෙනවා. ඔයින් සමහරවිට එකකින් හොඳ වෙනවා. හැබැයි බෙද මහත්තයා දන්නේ කොයි එකෙන්ද හොඳ වෙන්නේ කියලා ඔය ඔක්කොම ටික දෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ කියනවා නෑ මේ ඔක්කොම දුන්නම තමයි මේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැති වෙන්නේ කියලා කියනවා. එහෙම බෙහෙත් පොතු බිබී කියන එකේම කොරෝනාක් තාම තියෙනවා. හරියටම සෙපරේට් කරලා අරගෙන අපිට එතනට බෙහෙත දෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right. So I explain you what is messaging is. Let me explain to you, right? So messaging is one object calling behavior of another object. Messaging can one object calling behavior of another object. So there's nothing called one object accessing attributes of another object. Okay, so so there's a concept called object calling behavior of another object. Say object 1 calling behavior of object 2. So that is called messaging. But there's nothing called object 1. So this is behavior. There's nothing called object 1 accessing. Remember, objects have attributes and behaviors. There's nothing called object 1 accessing attributes of object 2. There is nothing like that. So that means this is allowed. This is okay. That is, object calling behavior of another object is okay. But object accessing attributes of another object is not okay. So this is called messaging. How do you call this? So this is called messaging. An object calling behavior of another object. But objects are not supposed to access attributes of another object. How do you call this phenomena in object-oriented? How do you call this restriction in object-oriented that you learn in semester 1? Anyone? Object-oriented වචන ටික list එක බලන්න. එතකොට උත්තරය අහුවෙන්න ඕන. list එකේ තියෙනවා මේ වචනේ. දැන් messaging කියන වචනේ list එකේ තියෙනවානේ. මේ වචනේත් ඒ list එකේ තියෙනවා. මම පළවෙනි slide එකේ දැම්මේ basics concepts advanced concepts කියලා. Anyone? No, not abstraction. Abstraction is slightly related but not really. Direct concept එකක් තියෙනවා. එද list එකේ වැඩි නෑ නේද? වචන 6ක් හතරනේ තියෙන්නේ. නෑ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ අර අඹ ගහට පොළු ගහනවා වගේ දැන් පොළු ගහනවා එකකින් වදී කියලා. නෑ. ඒ list එකේ තියුණාද මතක නෑ. ඒ list එකේ තියෙන එක විශේෂ එක්කෙනෙක් අතන. ඒකට කිව්ව මොකද්ද? මෙයාගේ මේ attributes පේන්නේ දැන් මෙයාව ආරක්ෂා කරගන්නේ කොහොමද? How do you make sure that this object doesn't access these values, attributes? Access means read or write. කොහොමද අපි එහෙම access කරන එක වළක්ව ගන්නෙ? දැන් වාගේ ඔය එක එක දේවල් access කරන එක වළක්ව ගන්නවා නම් මොකද කරන්නේ? ඇඳුමක් ඇඳ ගන්නවා. ඇඳුමක් ඇඳගෙන ඒව වහ ගන්නවා. වහගෙන කියනවා පාරේ යනකොට ඒව බලන්න බෑ ඔයගොල්ලෝ. ඔයාලට පුළුවන් මං ඇවිදිනවා බලන්න පුළුවන්. මම හොඳට පස්ස නටව ඇවිදිනවා බලන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඔයාලට පස්ස පෙන්වන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයා මොකද කරන්නේ? පස්සක් තියනවා කියලා පොඩ්ඩක් නටවල යනවා. සමහර ළමයි එහෙම යන්නේ නේද? හැබැයි පෙන්වන්නේ නැහැ ඒක ඇරලා. So that is called what? Data hiding. Right? Data hiding. So data hiding means object can call behavior of another object, but object is not supposed to access data of another object. So that is called data hiding. Right? So it's a special case of encapsulation. Actually, it's not a special case of encapsulation. We can take it as a different concept in object-oriented. Right? ඔය සමහර විශේෂයෙන් ගෑනු ළමයින්ගේ ටී-ෂර්ට් වල තියෙනවා දැක්කම මට පිස්සු හැදෙනවා. පිරිමි ළමයි යතින් හොඳයි. එක්ක ඔය ගෑනු ළමයි ටී-ෂර්ට් එකේ තියෙන වාක්‍ය කියවන්න නැතුව තමයි ඇඳගෙන යන්නේ. හරි ඔය සුපර් මාකට් වලට එහෙම ගියාම හරි ඒ කියන්නේ මේ data hide කරලා නැහැ. හිතේ තියෙන එක පිටේ ලියාගෙන යනවා. හිතේ තියෙන එක පිටේ ලියාගෙන යන්න එපා. හිතේ තියෙන එක පොඩ්ඩක් behavior එකකින් පෙන්න කෙනෙක් ගියාම ඇති. හරි behavior කියන්නේ පිරිමි ළමයි අර විසිල්ලයක් එහෙම ගන්න behavior එකේ ගෑනු ළමයි මේක සමහරවිට පිටේ ගහගෙන යනවා. විශේෂයෙන් ගෑනු ළමයි. හරි සමහර. So make sure your data is hidden and you can expose through behaviors, not through directly exposing your data. Right? So that is what data hiding is. Then what ටික ටික මේ object oriented concept එක එක ඔළුවට දාන්න යා. Right. So therefore, messaging is all about calling behaviors. You are not supposed to access other objects and data directly. Okay. So this is an example of messaging. So customer is doing a payment or maybe money transfer, or maybe let's take a payment. So what are the things happening? So customer object is doing a payment. So there will be customer class, payment class, then payment object will be created. Okay. So then there are two account objects created. So one account object is related to this customer. A customer account object. Account class, same class called account, but one object is related to this customer's account. Other object is related to, say, you are doing a money transfer to Somerset. So this object is your account object. This object is Somerset account object. Both are accounts. So then this payment object called the credit behavior of your object. Sorry, debit behavior of your object. From Somerset object, it's also the account object. It calls the credit behavior. මේ ඔක්කොම කරන්නේ payment object එක. මෙයා call කරේ payment object එකේ pay behavior එක. So now the payment object is calling the customer object's debit behavior, and vendor objects, both are account objects, credit behavior. Now, in debit behavior, your balance is reduced. In credit behavior, the balance of the Somerset account is increased by the same amount. So then maybe the customer object is sending a notification. Call the notification object, invoke the notification. Both are account objects. So account objects are basically calling, two account objects are calling the behavior of notification of the notification objects, two notification objects. So those notification objects are sending the SMS or whatever notification. So now your database is updated by the two account objects. So this account object update one row, this account object update another row, because your system is connected to databases, the same database. And of course, these are integrated with SMS gateways, and functionalities happen. Then SMS දෙකක් එනවා. දෙන්නගේ database වල update වෙලා තියෙනවා. then දෙන්න log වුණාට පස්සේ එක්කෙනෙක්ගේ අඩු වෙලා තියෙනවා. අනිත් එක්කෙනාගේ එකතු වෙලා තියෙනවා. සමහරට මෙයා transaction log එකේ transaction එකක් log කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ වෙලාවේ මෙහෙම transaction එකක් වුණා කියලා. So ඒවා තමයි මෙයා කියලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔන්න මොකද software එක වැඩ කරන්නේ. So this is what happens in object oriented system. So what your task is, if you are developing a banking system, so identify these classes, identify these attributes and behaviors, identify which classes must associated with which other classes. One class payment class must be associated with account class. But payment class is not supposed to associate it directly with the notification class, according to this one. And of course, there must be association between account class and notification class, and so on. So you must know which messages are passed. What are the attributes and behaviors of account class? What are the attributes and behaviors of payment class? Someone payment class එකේ තියෙන පුළුවන්. Can someone tell me some possible attributes of payment class? මේවට උත්තර ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා කියන්නේ ඔය සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක හරි. මේවට උත්තර දැන් එනවා කියන්නේ වාගේ ඔළුවට.
Date, reference number, like that. Sir.
Yes, payment reference number. Reference number. One more.
Payment date.
Payment date and time. Yes. So those are the payment date and time. Maybe payment type, right? And so on. ඒවා කරන්න මෙතන. එයා ඒ payment එකටත් update එකක් කරලා database එකේ record එකක් ගහනවා. මෙන්න මේ වෙලාවේ මෙහෙම payment එකක් වුණා කියලා. හරි මේ දවසේ මේ reference number එකට. So that is what software development is. Right? That is what we mean by object oriented software. So your task is design the software and then develop it. That is your task. If you can do that, that means you can go and work as software developer. Right? Object oriented software developer. You can do your final year project using object-oriented way. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, then itana sir අර මේ figure එකේ තිබ්බනේ count class එකේ තිබ්බනේ customer ටයි save slide එක පොඩ්ඩක් අය දාන්න පුළුවන්ද?
Vendor.
මේ customer ටයි vendor ටයි sir object දෙකක් දැන් ඔතන sir එතකොට ඒක හැදෙන්නේ account class කියන එකෙන් ඔය
නෑ,
වගේ
account class
object
එකේ
එකක්
නෙමෙයි
හැදෙනවා.
object එක හැදෙන්නේ. account class එකේ object තමයි හැදෙන්නේ. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මෙතන වෙන්නේ account say just give me 1 minute. Say account say a cost equal new account. මෙතන වෙන්නේ account a vendor අපි නම කියලා equal new account. එකම account object account class එකම account class එකේ object දෙකක් හැදුනේ.
හරි sir. Thank you very much sir. I got
එකම
it.
account class එකේ object දෙකක් හැදුනේ. ඊට පස්සේ මෙයාගේ call කරනවා මේ object එකේ call කරනවා debit මෙයාගේ call කරනවා credit. Right? So then
Credit. හරි sir. Okay sir. Got it.
So
Okay sir. Thank you very much.
yeah. So that is how it works. So therefore, when the transactions are happening, objects are created, objects are destructed. Another object now you log off. Right? After this transaction is done, these objects are garbage collected. So memory is taken, again memory is released because there will be another transaction by another person. Right? So that is why you need a lot of memory when it comes to those server side. In the web server, all these objects are created in the web server. Right? Not only your transaction, while this transaction is happening, so many other transactions are happening, right? So many branches, online banking sessions are there, people who are doing it at the ATM machines, those transactions done at the counters, all those things are happening at the same server. Okay, so therefore we need a lot of memory, but still it's manageable. Because they are
garbage කරනවා කියලා කිව්වේ එහෙම දාන්න බෑනේ
මේ
sir.
account එකට memory යනවානේ මේ account object එක හැදිච්ච ගමන් මේ account object එක දාලා attributes ටික initialize වෙනවා. මේකට initialize වෙනවා. එතකොට මේ account number එක current balance එක ඒවා ටික ඔක්කොම memory එකට load වෙනවා database එකේ. එතකොට මේවට memory යනවා. memory යන්නේ attributes වලට. behaviors වලට නෙමෙයි. behaviors වලට යන්නේ processing power. project object එක හැදිච්ච ගමන් වෙන්නේ memory allocate කරන එක.
process එක ඉවර වුණාම
නෙමෙයි
garbage අපේ database එකේ store කරගන්න.
Can you repeat the question?
So දැන් අපි හිතමු මම payment එකක් කරනවා කියලා. එතකොට ඒ payment එක ඉවර වුණාම ඒ data ටික අපේ database එකේ store වෙනවා. එහෙම නේ sir?
store වෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ එක behavior එක අපි ලියනවා database එකේ store කරන logic එක. මේ debit කියන behavior එක ඇතුළේදී අපි database connection එකක් අරගෙන ඉවරලා database අර SQL එක ලියවනවා.
හරි sir.
හරි. එතකොට
හරි sir.
මේ debit method එක call වෙලා ඉවරනකොට database එක update වෙලා ඉවරයි.
Okay sir. Okay sir.
ඊට පස්සේ credit method එක call කරනකොට database එක මොකද database එක update කරද්දී error එකක් ආවොත් එහෙම මේක call කරන එක නවත්තනවා. කළා මේක reverse කරනවා. ඔක තමයි ඊළඟට වගේ database subject එකේ අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා transaction handling කියලා. දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ අනිත් subject එකේ database management system ඒක ඉගෙන ගන්නවා.
Okay sir.
මේක fail වුණොත් එහෙම මේක කරන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒ කියන්නේ මේක කළා මේක fail වුණොත් එහෙම මොකද කරන්න ඕන? මේක ආයිමත් roll back කරන්න ඕන. මොකද දැන් නැත්නම් debit කරලා credit කරගන්න බැරි වුණොත් එහෙම. හරි මොකද සමහරවිට මේක ඔය බැංකුවේ මේක වෙන බැංකුවක. එතකොට ඔයාලට මෙතන සමහරවිට වෙබ් සර්විස් කෝල් එකක් කරන්න වෙනවා. සමහරවිට නෙමෙයි කරන්න වෙනවා. මේ ඔයාගේ බැංකුව සම්පත් බැංකුව. අපි දුන්න සමසෙට් එකේ බැංකුව හැට් නැෂනල් බැංක් එක. එතකොට හැට් නැෂනල් බැංක් එකේ database එක කෝල් කරන්න බෑනේ සම්පත් බැංකුවේ payment app එකට.
Yes sir.
එතකොට මෙයා කෝල් කරන්න ඕනේ වෙබ් සර්විස් එකක්. මෙයා response එක එවුවොත් එහෙම නෑ මේක කරන්න බෑ කියලා. මොකක් හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා account number එක වැරදි හරි මොකක් හරි කියලා. එතකොට ඔයාගේ මේ debit කරපු එකත් ආයෙ අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. reverse කරන්න ඕනේ. reverse කළාට message එකක් දෙන්න මේ transaction එක fail වුණා කියලා. So that is what is mean by transaction handling. And that is what you mean by component based software development, because when you are doing software or when the transactions are happening, 100% of the things may not be under your control. Sometimes you have to call other systems, right? So depending on their response, you may have to continue the rest of the stuff. Therefore, real world software is not simple thing. It's a complicated thing. That is why we need engineers. That is why they are willing to pay, right, big salaries for these guys. Right? Because not everyone can do it, right? So
Okay, sir. Thank you very
yeah,
much, sir.
yeah.
I,
So
I got the idea,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. So then what is mean by garbage collection is, now remember this object is created. Now this object is created. At the end of the transaction, these objects are no longer needed. So maybe you have log off. So then these objects are removed from the memory. That means those attributes, of course, now the data is updated in the database, but these are in the memory of the program. So therefore, these objects are now released to the RAM again, so that it can be used for other objects. Okay, so that is what garbage collection is. Right. So that is how it works. Okay. So therefore, you must know exactly what is happening when a object-oriented system is running. Okay. That is your task. Right. So those who know what is happening, or those who have fairly good understanding about what is happening, so then you can start designing your class diagram, drawing your sequence diagram, communication diagrams, and so on. So that is why we are spending time here. We are not spending much time drawing communication sequence diagrams and so on, because that you can do it once you understand this. Okay. So this is your task. Right. So we'll take a break. After the break, we discuss the rest of the stuff. Okay. Right. So now the time is 9:30. Let's start at say 9:50. We'll start at 9:50. Okay, so let's continue. Right. So remember, now we can encapsulate attributes and behaviors into attributes and behaviors into class. Now these attributes and behaviors, what happens when it comes to development? Because no point designing something if you can't develop it, right? So therefore, attributes will be model or map into variables. Behaviors will be map into methods. And additionally, you have another concept called constructor, right? So those are the three things that is in a class when you develop the code: variables, methods, constructor. So when an object is created, memory is allocated for the data, or very specifically instance variables. Okay. So that means every time object is created, memory is allocated. Every time object is this garbage collected, destructed, that memory is released. So when it comes to methods, the memory is allocated only when method is executed. Then only method is loaded, because it has to be executed. But it's more than memory. What is needed is the processing power. So when methods is called, that means we are doing some processing. Okay. And these methods can refer to the variables. Okay. May refer to the variables. And of course, the constructor is called when the object is called, when the object is created. It's like a method, but it is called only once when object is created. So you can't call the constructor anymore. So it's once every object is created, once called, then it's no longer called. If you have a constructor, if you don't have a constructor, that is fine. So then it is not getting called. Right? So when it comes to variables or attributes, actually, there are two type of attributes can be mapped into two type of things. An attribute can map into an instance variable, or attribute can map into class variable. දැන් මේක කරගන්න බැරි නම් ඔයාලට finally project එක object oriented විදිහට කරන්න එපා. කරන්න එපා. ඉතින් සහ object oriented software developers ඉන්න තියෙන job වලට apply කරන්න එපා ඉතින්. IT degree එකකට කවන්නේ මම කියන්නේ ඒවට apply කරන්න එපා. වගේ නිකන් interview එකේදී නිකන් ඕන්ඩි වල එන්න වෙනව නේද? right? So අනිත් අතට එහෙම ආසාය software field එකට යන්න මේවා හොඳට තේරුම් ගන්නත් ඕන. Right. So your attribute that you model, you identify, can end up as either instance variable, or they can end up as class variables. Okay. So there is a third type of variables also. Can someone tell me, in a class, when you code, when you write your Java code, because you did a lot of coding in semester 1, Other than instance variables and class variables, there's another type of variable. How do you call? Anyone? How do you call this third type of variables? දැන් මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑමින් කරලා ඉවරනම දාලා තින්නේ ඒ knowledge එක උඩ බිල් කරන්න ඕන හන්ද හරි ඒ confidence එක උඩ තමයි මෙතනින් එහාට කතාව කරගෙන යන්නේ software එක design කරන වැඩේ software design කරන්න බෑනේ මොනවද තියෙන variables වර්ග මොනවද තියෙන methods වර්ග කියලා දන්නේ නැත්නම් මොකද design කරන්නේ ඒවා දැනගත්ත කෙනෙක් පස්සේ එයා දන්නවා මම මේවට කළා code එක ලියන්න පුළුවන් කියලා how do you call this third type of variables no so already mentioned right class variables and instance variables so I mean other than class variables and instance variables what is the third type of variable that can be in your class when you code තුන්වෙනි වර්ගයේ variable වලට කියන්නේ මොනවා කියලා so if you answer me fast we can go fast we can do it faster so remember your class can have instance variable class variables then methods and constructor these inside methods also there can be variables right inside methods not outside methods outside methods are the instance variable or class variable so inside methods also you can declare variables those are called local variables so those are just created when the method is called when the method is done the last line is executed that variable is garbage collected those are temporary variables used only during the execution of that method right so those are local variables but these are instance variables and class variables so what is the difference between instance variable and class variable okay so instance variable is bound to every instance of object or every instance of a class every object get its own value if every object get its own value then we have to take that attribute as an instance variable like balance account number so your account object's account number is not my account object's account number your balance is not my balance every object must have a different value unique value or its own value so therefore if that is the case we have to model it or when you are coding make sure that you code that attribute as a instance because at the designing we just say attribute but when you're coding you have to decide should I take it as an instance variable or should I code it as a class variable another name for class variable is static variable okay so likewise you must know exactly what is the difference between instance variable and class variable okay so how do you decide whether make it as an instance variable or make it as a class variable okay. And every time object is created memory is allocated for instance variable so if there are 10 objects in the memory of that class 10 separate memory allocated for a particular instance variable but when it comes to class variable only one variable is created per class there can be 10 objects of that class but only one variable or one memory location is allocated if it is a class or static variable and all these objects can refer to the same value they don't get their own separate values so that is the difference between instance variable and class variable so that decision we have to take as software engineers should I make it instance variable should I make it a class variable so if it is common thing shared value for all the objects let's make it a class variable when you're coding like interest rate so interest rate if all these objects are of the same account type the interest rate is the same so therefore why don't we make an interest rate as a class variable or static variable rather than instance variable because otherwise you are wasting memory we don't want to waste memory okay so that is the difference between instance variable and class variable any question but in the design time we just mark it as attribute so software developers take that decision at the development Right. So we discussed the constructor. Okay. So how do you create an object? Using the new keyword that you discussed in semester 1. So whenever you create an object, memory is allocated for instance variables. There's nothing called memory allocated for constructor and instance method, but that is there. Okay, that is there. But every object get its own instance variables. And once you have the class variables. So every object can refer to these class variables. Okay, so that is the idea. So you can see that some of these attributes we have taken it as instance variables like count number and balance. But interest rate, we have taken it as a class variable. Then of course we can have your constructors. And then we have instance method and class method. So what is the difference between instance method and class method? Now you know the difference between instance variable and class variable. So if your method or behavior refer to any of the instance variable, in this case these two, if your method is referring to means read or write, read the value or change the value. So then that method must be an instance method. But if your method does not refer to any of the instance variable, you can mark it as a class variable. Class කියලා අපි කියන්නේ කොහමද? Static keyword එක. Right? Static keyword. That is the next thing you must know. So then only you know how to convert your design to code. Of course, when you are designing, you must know that how it is going to be developed later. Otherwise, you can't do the designing. And of course, someone who is developing also must know how to convert this design into develop. So therefore, there's a very small difference between developer and designer. Only thing is designer is more experienced than the developer. So designer take those decisions with the discussion with the developers. Of course, developers can contribute. But the designers, because they are more experienced and of course they are more talented, not every developer become a designer. සමහර විටගෙන මේ ඩෙවලොපර් විදිහට අවුරුදු 3ක් හිටියම ඩිසයිනර් වෙනවා. එහෙම වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඩෙවලොපර් විදිහට අවුරුදු 10ක් හිටියත් ඩිසයිනර් විසලා වෙන්නේ නැහැ සමහරවිට. ප්‍රොමෝෂන් එක ප්‍රොමෝට් කරන්නේ නැහැ ඩිසයිනර් විදිහට. ඔයා මැචුවර්ඩ් නැහැ. ඔයා සීරියස් නැත්තම්. එහෙනම් මේ අවුරුදු ගාන සම්පූර්ණ වෙනකොට උඩට යනවා එහෙම ජොබ් නෙමෙයි. සමහර විටගෙන එහෙම ජොබ් කියලා. මෙච්චර සේවා කාලයක් නිම කරාම මේකට ප්‍රොමෝට් වෙනවා. ඒ ඇවිල්ලා වැල් බයිලා. එහෙම කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? සමහරවිට අවුරුද්දෙන් දෙකෙන් ඩිසයිනර්ස්ලා වෙනවා. තව කෙනෙක්ට අවුරුදු 10ක් හිටියත් ඩිසයිනර්ස්ලා වෙන්න බෑ. මොකද එයා ඒ මැචියුරිටි එක පෙන්නන නැහැ. දැන් BIT කෝස් එකේ අවුරුදු 10ක් හිටියා කියලා level 2 එකට දාන්නේ නැහැ නේද? level 2 එකට දාන්නේ අවුරුදු 3ක් හිටියට පස්සේ අයින් කරන්න දානවා කෝස් එකේ. එක level එකේ අවුරුදු 3ක් හිටියා කියලා. දැන් සමහර ආයතන වල ප්‍රොමෝෂන් දෙන්නේ එහෙම නෙමෙයි නේද? සේවා කාලයක් මෙච්චර කම්ප්ලීට් වෙනවා ආව ඊළඟ පොතේ ඒ ආයතන කණන් වැටෙන්නේ ඒක. ඒ ආයතන ඇවිල්ලා මහා කාලගන්නේ ආයතන. ඒවා පාලකයෝ නෙමෙයි ඉන්නේ ඒවා ආයතනයක් කියන්නේ මොකද්දවත් දන්නේ නැති ආයතන ඒවා. Right. So you can see that. So we did this code in semester 1. We did this මේ code එක අපි කරා semester 1 වල. So you can see that. So this is referring to instance variable balance. So therefore it's an instance method. You can't have the static keyword. But if you say something like set interest rate, it is not referring to any of the instance variables. So the two instance variables are account number and balance. So of course it is not referring to any of those. So therefore we can mark it as static. But if you mark something like this as a static, you will get an error message because you are referring to instance variables. You are referring to instance variables. Of course, your constructor, you can't mark it as static. By default, it must be a non-static. And of course, it can refer to instance variables. So this is another static method or class method because it is not referring to instance variable. Okay. So any questions on that? උදාන්තිම මේ කෝඩ් එකක් බවට පත් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කෝඩ් එකක් බවට පත් කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා දැනගෙන තමයි ඩිසයින් කරන්නේ. එයා දන්නවා මේ attribute එක instance variable එකක් වෙනවා පස්සේ මේක class variable එකක් වෙනවා. මේක instance method එකක් වෙනවා, මේක class method එකක් වෙනවා කියලා. So then of course you must know what happens when you are creating an object. Right? So I told you class act like a blueprint or factory to create objects. So what happens when you create object? So it's a three-step process. Three-step process. So this is your reference variable. Just like in text, only thing is now you are referring to an object, type object. And this is the variable. Now this is where you say create object. So every time you use the new keyword, object is created. That means memory is allocated. Okay. And the third thing is this object is assigned to this reference variable. Right. So therefore, you have reference variable, you have object, and of course this reference variable is referring to this object. So therefore, this reference variable is something like a remote control that can control this object. Control this object means it can refer to variables and call the methods. Technically, yes, you can refer to variables, but practically, we make sure that this remote control cannot access the variables. That is what is meant by data hiding. Right? So therefore, the best practice is remote control can call the behaviors, and behaviors can call the instance variables. Okay, so that is well-behaved object class. Okay. So this picture is very important. This is what happens in the memory. Same thing, you put it into a pictorial format. So a count object, and these are the class variables and class methods. So they are not bound to a specific instance. Any instance can refer to this class variable and call the class methods. Okay. So similarly, you can see that now we are creating another object of the same class. So another object is created. That means instance variables are initialized. Still, the equal mark is not executed. When the equal mark is executed, now this is referring to this object. Now A1 is referring to this object. A2 is referring to this object. So when I say A1 dot, you are calling this method. Actually, same method, but the method can refer to its own instance variable. When I say A2 dot a method call, the same method you are calling, but you are referring to your instance variable. So when I say deposit in A1, it update its balance. When I say A2 dot deposit, it will update the A2 object's balance. So they have the same behavior, but two results. One is updating one record, the other one is updating another record. Right? So any questions on this? So this understanding is the one that you carry forward to understand sequence diagrams, communication diagrams, and of course understand how to design a software in object-oriented manner. මේ pitch එක නැති කෙනෙක්ට design එකක් කරන්න බෑ. ඒක ඉස්සෙල්ලා development කරලා ඒක object-oriented programming කරලා designing වලට එන්නේ. මොකද design කරන්නේ develop කරන්න පුළුවන් system එකක්. develop කරන විදිය දැනගෙන තමයි design එක කරන්නේ. නැත්නම් කාටද හිතෙන්න පුළුවන් ඉස්සෙල්ලා design උගෙනගෙන පස්සේ development ඉගෙන ගන්න එක නේද කරන්න ඕන කියලා. නෑ, design කරන්නේ develop කරන්න පුළුවන් system එකක් වෙන්න. ඒක design කරනකොට දන්නවා මේවා තමයි අන්තිමට මේක develop වෙන්නේ කියලා. Any questions here? So every time you create object, separate memory is allocated for instance variables. But class variables, they are shared. And of course, you can do something like this also. මෙහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන්. Reference variable එකක් පුළුවන් ආයෙ වෙන object එකක් refer කරන්න. Now what happens? When A2 is equal A1, now A1 is looking at this one. So A1 is, sorry, A2 yeah. Sorry, A2 is looking at A1, sorry, the other way. So now A2 is looking at where A1 is looking at. So therefore, no, it can't look at two objects. So this is link is destroyed. So therefore, now your A2 reference variable is also referring to A1 reference variables object. So now if A1 is referring to the account number 001, and A2 earlier may refer to 002, but now both are referring to 001 account number. So likewise, you can, these are independent. Object and reference variables, they are two different things. At any time, a reference variable can refer to any object, whatever the object you are assigning. Okay. So therefore, after this line is executed, this object is not referred by any reference variable, and this will be garbage collected. If there's an object and no reference variable is referring to it, it is garbage collected. It is garbage collected. So therefore, this will be, now this is also looking at this one. No one is looking at this one, no reference variable. So this will be garbage collected. That means the memory is released, the main memory. So this is after this line is executed. Then someone will ask, what is the use of it? Of course, in this kind of situation, it may not have any use, but you have to understand if you write this kind of a line, what will happen. Right. So remember, your constructor can refer to the instance variables. Your constructor can refer to the instance variables. And also your constructor can call instance methods. And not only that, your constructor can call class methods or static methods. Those are all possibilities. And of course, your class method can call class variables. Okay. And of course, the class methods can call class methods. And constructor can access the class variables as well, if it is not well encapsulated, data hidden. Right. So next, your instance methods have access to the instance variables, obviously. And not only that, your instance methods can call another instance method. And not only that, your instance method can call class methods. And instance method can access class variables if it is not data hidden. Okay, data hidden. You කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් මොනවාද බැරි දේවල් මොනවාද කියලා දැනගන්න ඉන්නවා. So all these are possible things, but this is possible, but not a good thing to do. So when you are designing the software, we will make sure that this is not happening. So that is what is meant by data hiding. Data hiding means a reference variable cannot access the variable, instance variable. Rather, they have to go through this path. Right? They have to go through this path. You call the behavior and behavior call the variable. Okay. Of course, the class methods, either you can call through reference variables or you can directly call through the class name. Actually, the preferred way is call through the class name. Class name dot call the behavior. And again, this is also possible, but if it is well data hidden, this will not be allowed. Right. So this orange line means if it is not data hidden, possible, but if it is data hidden, properly designed, those are also not allowed. Right. So this is also possible, but again, it's not very good idea using reference variable to call class methods, but again, it's possible. But the best way to call class method is your class directly call class method, or your instance method calls the class methods. Instance methods can call class methods. මෙතන කරන්න බැරි ටික ඔයා දැනගෙන ඉන්න එක ඉතාම වැදගත්. කරන්න බැරි දේවල් ටික. මොනවාද මෙතන කරන්න බැරි දේවල් ටික? කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන්ද? මොකද කරන්න බැරි දේවල් ටික තමයි අපිට මතක තියාගන්න ලේසි. මොනවාද කරන්න බැරි දේවල් කියන්න බලන්න මෙතන. I will draw it in red. Your instance method cannot call constructor. ඕක කරන්න බෑ. A class method cannot call constructor. Okay. The class method cannot call instance method. Okay. So what else? තවුනත් කරන්න බැරි දේවල් ටික. කරන්න බැරි දේවල් ටික තමයි මතක තියාගන්න ලේසි අතන. ඔය ටික තමයි කරන්න බැරි දේවල්. Class method cannot call instance method. Class method cannot call constructor. And of course instance method cannot call constructor. අනිත් ඔක්කොම වගේ පුළුවන් නේ. අනිත් ඔක්කොම අපිට. Instance method can call instance method. Constructor can call instance method. Constructor can call class method. Instance method have access to instance variable. Instance method have access to class variables. Instance method can call class methods. Class method can call another class method. අන්නේ බලන්න ඕගොල්ලෝ කල්පනා කරලා. Right? Okay. Think about it. So then there are two important questions that you must know. දැන් මම කියන්නේ සමහර දේවල් කරන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. ඇයි ඒව කරන්න දෙන්නේ නැත්තේ? So why aren't class methods allowed to call instance methods? Class methods වලට වැඩි instance method call කරන්න. I told you that class method cannot call instance methods. Why? ඒක තමයි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා කියන්නේ. මේවට උත්තර තියෙන්න බෑ. Why is it class methods not allowed to call instance methods? Why? Anyone? දැන් මේකට උත්තරයක් තියෙනවා කියන්නේ වැඩේ තේරිලා. මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙන අයිඩියා එක, ෆිලොසොෆි එක, ඔබ්ජෙක්ට් ඔරියන්ටඩ් කන්සෙප්ට්ස් වල තියෙන තැන. සමහර ඒවා පුළුවන්, සමහර ඒවා බෑ. ඒතකොට බැරි ඒවා අහන්න ඕනේ ඇයි බැරි කියලා. පුළුවන් ඒවා නැති පුළුවන්නේ. බැරි ඒවා අහන්න ඕනේ ඇයි බැරි කියලා. පුළුවන් ඒවා ඔයා කල්පනා කරන මේකේ වැරද්දක් වෙනවද? අපේ කට්ටිය වෙන්නේ බැරි කිව්ව ගමන් හරි හරි බෑ බෑ කියලා නේද? බයටත් එක්ක මෙයා කරනවා. Anyone? Why it is not allowed to call the class methods to call instance methods? So class method means it's a contract. So when you put it something into class method, you are saying that this method doesn't affect any of the object, any of the instances. That is why you mark it as static. That is a contract. You saying that don't worry, you can call this method, none of the object will get effect. Now, if your class method call an instance method, all of a sudden you violate that contract. So you are telling that we are not referring to the instances. But if your class method call instance method, of course, instance method have access to the instance variables. So that means you're violating that. So therefore, that is not allowed because that will fail the entire concept. So then I already explained you why is it not good idea to directly access variables by other parties. So we want to hide it and let the data is accessed by your behaviors and let others call the behavior, because behavior is a logic. We have the control. We can do some checks, security checks, validations. So that flexibility is there when the data is accessed through the behaviors. Okay. So the next question someone will ask is why can't now the constructor can call methods, instance and static method, but your instance method cannot call the constructor. Why? Anyone? Why it is not allowed the instance methods to call constructor? Why it is not allowed? There's a purpose for constructor. So what is the objective of constructor? Do something that you are supposed to do at the object creation time. So that is the only purpose of constructor. Now if instance method can call the constructor, anyone can call instance method at different times. Now you are calling constructor after creating the object also. So that is not the purpose of constructor. So therefore that is not allowed. So likewise you must know what is allowed, what is not allowed. Okay, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and why it is not allowed. Okay, why it is not allowed. Right, so that is the basics. That is the basics. So any questions? මේ classes, object, methods, messages ඒවා ටික කතා කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි යනවා encapsulation and information hiding කතන්දර වලට. හරි. මේක තේරෙන්නේ නැතුව ඔතනින් එහාට කරලා වැඩක් නැහැ. කරන්න බෑ ඇත්තටම. එතනින් එහාට කතන්දරේ. කාට software develop කරගන්න ඒව කරන්න බෑ. බැරි අය නෙමෙයිනේ අපිට හදන්න ඕන පුළුවන් අය වෙන්නේ. Right. So now we move on to now we are done with the basics. And you know how to convert the concept of class into coding. Instance variable, class variable, instance method, class method, constructor. Now let's look at the next level of concepts. Abstraction, encapsulation, data hiding, inheritance and polymorphism we can take separately. Okay, right. So what is mean by, now these are the basic concepts or the next level concepts: abstraction, encapsulation, data hiding, right? Inheritance, polymorphism. If you want, you can take association here, or you can take it as basic. Okay. Right. So let's take one by one. දැන් ඉතින් අර දිග කතන්දර ඉවරයි. දැන් තියෙන කෙටි කතන්දර. හරි. සිම්පල් කතන්දර. සිම්පල් කියන්නේ වැඩේ තේරුම් ගත්ත කෙනාට දැන් වැඩේ ඉවරයි අතට. මෙතනින් එහාට ටික තේරෙනවා. Right. So the first concept is abstraction. Right? Abstraction. So this is super important concept. So what is mean by abstraction? මේකට උත්තරයක් නැත්නම් කවදාවත් software designer කෙනෙක් වෙන්න එපා. නෙමෙයි software develop කරන්නවත් එපා. يعني code එකකට අත ගහන්නවත් එපා. What is mean by abstraction? So it's a concept. So abstraction means we model and develop minimum essential. Right? We model and develop minimum essential. අවම අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ටික තමයි model කරන්නේ. Minimum අත්‍යවශ්‍ය, essential. That is the first part of the definition. Abstraction. So your account class has minimum number of attributes, minimum number of behaviors, nothing else. Okay, nothing else. Okay. Model only the minimum essential details. So then someone will say, is it a big thing? Of course, it is a big thing. Very, very big thing. Right? ඔයගොල්ලෝ ලංකාව කියන්නේ බංකොලොත් රටක්. ඇයි ඒ? රට බංකොලොත් උනේ ඇයි? සමහර කෙනා රට බංකොලොත් උනේ ඇයි කම් 225 එපා වෙන හුටපට කියන්නේ. මොකද රට බංකොලොත් කරන් ඡන්ද දුන්නේ ඒගොල්ලෝමනේ. ඇයි මේ රට බංකොලොත් උනේ? අපේ රටේ පහුගිය අවුරුදු 10ක් විතර කාලය ඇතුළත දුර කරේ මිනිමම් එසෙන්ෂල් දේවල්ද වෙන හුටපටද? නෙළුම් කුළුණු හදනවා නේද? ටිකට් පිට්ටනිය හදනවා. මේ ණයට අරගෙන අතේ සල්ලි තිනකොට කරාට කවන්නේ නැහැ. හැම නේද? තමන්ගේ කරන්ට් account එකේ balance එක surplus එකක් තියෙනකොට නෙළුම් කුළුණු හදුවට කවන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි මේ ණයට අරගෙන minimum essential දේවල් කරේ නැහැ. නේද? රැසි මොකක් හරි දිනුනම ඉන්නේ මොකක් හරි විවෘත කිරීමේ උත්සාහයක් තිබුණම කෝටි ගණන් වියදම් කළා. ඉතින් රට බංකොලොත්. So engineers, as engineering discipline, part of the engineering discipline is we do the minimum essential. Right? We do the minimum essential. So that when we now, a lot of people say that software development is complicated, software development is hard, software development is difficult. Oh, වැඩි ඕනේ සමහරුන්ට මේ ඔෆිස් එකට යන එකත් වෙන difficult. වැඩට යන එකත් difficult. ඇයි ඒ? සාරියක් කියලා එකක් අඳිනව නේද? ඒක යටට එකයි ඊළඟට එකයි තව එකයි. ඕකේ රැලි තියන්න ඕන බෝලමාල කටු ගහගෙන ඔක්කොම කරගෙන යන්නේ නේද? ඔය වැඩට යන එක මහා දුෂ්කර ක්‍රියාවක් තමයි. නමුත් සමහර රටවල මිනිස්සු වැඩට යන්නේ කොහොමද? තාම සරල විදියට වැඩට යනවා. එතකොට එයාට ඒක ඩිෆිකල්ට් නෑ. ඊට පස්සේ එතන ගිහලා වැඩ කරන එකත් අරයට ඩිෆිකල්ට්. මොකද මේක පොඩි වෙයිද, ඉරෙයිද? හරි. එයාට টয়ලට් එකට යන එකත් එන ඩිෆිකල්ට්. අර අයින් කළා මේක අයින් කළා අනිත් එක අයින් කළා. එතකොට කවුද මේක කරගත්තේ? තමන්. කොහොමද ආගේ ෆයිනල් ඉයර් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එක අමාරු වෙන්නේ? තමන් මේක ඩිෆිකල්ට් කරගන්නවා. හරි. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම ටික කරන්නේ නැතුව ඩිසයින් එක ඇතුලේ වාට වෙන වෙන බහුබූත පේනවා. වෙන වෙන බහුබූත පේනවා. මේකේ තියෙන අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ඇසෝසියේෂන් ටික, අත්‍යවශ්‍ය ඇට්‍රිබියුට්ස් ටික, අත්‍යවශ්‍ය බිහේවියර්ස් ටික පේන්නේ නැතුව ඔයාලට වෙන වෙන ඒවා පේනවා. ඊට පස්සේ කියනවා මේක අමාරුයි කියලා. ඒක අමාරුයි නෙමෙයි ඔයාගේ හිත සංසුන් නැහැ ඔළුව. එහෙම හිතලා පුරුද්දක් නැහැ ඉංජිනේර කෙනෙක් විදියට. ඔයා හිතලා තින්නේ වාදකයෙක්, ගායකයෙක්, නැට්ටුවෙක්, චිත්‍ර ශිල්පියෙක් වගේ හිතලා තියෙන. චිත්‍ර ශිල්පියෙක්ට මිනිමම් එසෙන්ෂල් අඳින්න බෑ. චිත්‍ර ශිල්පියෙක් මේක අලංකාර කරන්න ඕන. ඔයගොල්ලෝ අහලා තියෙන සින්දුවක් කියනකොට කියනවා අලංකාර කරන්න සින්දුව. සින්දුව අලංකාර කරන්න කොයි කෙනෙක් බෝරින්නේ. ඔව් ඒ හැබැයි soft engineersට කියන්නේ අලංකාර කරන්නද නෑ. මිනිමම් එසෙන්ෂල් ටික මොඩල් කරන්න. අපි ගායකයෝ කලාකාරයෝ නෙමෙයි. right? අපි කලාකාරයෝ. ඔන්න ඔකට තමයි කියන්නේ abstraction කියලා. මිනිමම් එසෙන්ෂල් ටික කරනකොට software එක ලස්සනට ඩෙවලොප් වෙනවා. ඔයාලට තියෙන අර අනවශ්‍ය බහුබූත ටික යනවා. අනවශ්‍ය කම්ප්ලිකේෂන් ටික යනවා. ජීවිතෙත් එහෙම තමයි. ජීවිතේ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම දේ කරනකොට ඔයාගේ ජීවිතේ හරිම සුන්දරයි. හරි. හරිම සුන්දරයි. ගෙයක් හදනකොට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම දේ ගේ හදා ගන්න. වාහනයක් ගන්නකොට ඔයාට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම වාහනයක් ගන්න. වෙඩින් එකක් ගන්නකොට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම ටික කරලා වෙඩින් එක ගන්න. ඕක ඇතුලේ දෝලාවෙන් යන්නයි නේද? කඩු කස්ථාන ඇඳගෙන ඉන්නයි ගියාට පස්සේ මේකත් එන කරුමයක් වෙනවා. අවශ්‍යදී ඔයාටම තේරෙන්නේ මේක මොන කරුමයක්ද මම මේ විඳින්නේ කියලා. හරි. හැමදේම එහෙම තමයි. අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම දේ කරනකොට ඒ ජීවිත හරි සුන්දරයි. ඉංජිනේර්ස්ලා හැමදෙස්සම කම්ප්ලෙක්ස් දේවල් කරද්දී ඒගොල්ලෝ අත්‍යවශ්‍ය අවම දේ තමයි කරන්නේ. Because otherwise it's the task itself is complex, so we don't want to do anything else other than minimum essential, right? So that is what abstraction is. Okay, so it's a very simple concept, it's a very effective concept. ඕකෙන් තමයි නේද සමහර කන්න ගියාමත් නේද තවද වෙන රටවල වල අය සරල කෑමක් කන්නේ සරල කෑමක් කනවා ඒගොල්ලෝ ආයෙ වැඩ. ලංකාවේ බොහෝ විට ගෙවල් වල වෙනම එක්කෙනෙක් ඉන්න උයන්න විතරක්. උදේට උයනවා, ඒ ටික හොදලා දාලා දවල්ට උයනවා, ඒ ටික හොදලා දාලා ආයෙ රැට උයනවා. මොකද මේ උයනවා කියන එක එන කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. බලම් පහක විතර ව්‍යංජන පහක් විතර හදාගෙන. හරිම කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ් හන්ද රට බංකොලොත්. ඇයි ඉතින් මේගොල්ලෝ එන කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ් නේ උයන්න ගියත් කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්, අඳින්න ගියත් කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. කසාදයක් බදින්න ගියත් කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්, මල ගෙදරත් කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. හරි මරණයක් වුණාමත් කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. හැම මගුලම කම්ප්ලිකේටඩ්. ඊට පස්සේ රටවල් බංකොලොත්. මොකද අර සරල මිනිස්සු ඉස්සරහට යනවා වේගෙන්. So when you are doing software development, make sure you model the minimum essential. Okay. So you can focus on the essential. It's a minimalistic design. It's simple. When something is simple, it's easy to change. That is where the agility comes. Right? Agility. So you will learn agile development in next semester. So one of the philosophical reasons for agile development is simplicity, leanness. Okay. Right. So that is abstraction. So the second concept is encapsulation. So we already discussed about encapsulation, right? Now in structured programming, data and methods are, data and operations are not put it into one structure, but in object-oriented approach, we encapsulate data and behaviors of one entity into one class. Right? So that is called encapsulation. So when you bundle them, it is in one place. So your behavior has access to the relevant variables, not other variables. Okay. So account class methods have access to the account variables like balance. The payment object has its own variables, payment date, and so on. So that is what encapsulation. Put it into a structure. Right? Bundle your attributes and behaviors together. So that is called encapsulation. Now, what මේ concepts ඉගෙන ගන්න අපිට වෙලා යන්නේ නැහැ. වෙලා ගියේ මොකද්ද object එකක් කියන්නේ, මොකද්ද variable එකක් කියන්නේ, මොකද්ද attributes map වෙන්නේ මොනවටද? So when you do proper encapsulation, it hides the complexity to the external component. Sorry, it's not components, external components. Okay. So there's a spelling mistake. So it gives you better modularity, cohesion. So related things are in one place, and better maintainability, reusability, because those components are now self-contained, like classes. And finally, I already explained you the data hiding, right? So other objects are not supposed to directly access data of another object. Object X is not supposed to access data of object Y or object of type Y, class Y. Rather, you call the behavior of that object and let that behavior access the variable, because then it has better control, better security, and so on. If you directly access variables, it can lead to a lot of problems. So that is called data hiding. How to do this? Make your variables private. So when you make your variables private, only your methods have the access. Other objects, other classes from other objects, they can't call these they can access the variables, because private means only that class has the access. Okay. The code කළා කතා කරලා තියෙන semester 1 දැන් මේ පොඩි revision එකක් කරන්න. So make your variable data private and let your non-private methods access it. මොකද method එක private කරොත් එහෙම හරියන්නේ නැහැ. එතකොට හරියට access කරන්න විදියම නැති වෙනවා. So better security, you can do better validations, access controlling, and so on. And also we can change the data structure also, because you are not aware of the data structure. You are just calling a behavior. So you can even change the data structure. Maybe earlier it is an array. Now you are put it into a set or list. The external code you don't have to change, because you are calling a behavior. Okay. So make your variables private and let your behaviors access it, and make sure your behaviors are exposed to other parties. They call the behavior, and behavior access the private data. Okay. So super easy. Right. But then on the මේව කරන්න වෙලා යන්නේ අර මුලදී තමයි වෙලා ගියේ. Right. So we'll stop at this point, this subject, because I want to start the data structures and algorithm subject also, because it's again programming subject. So next time we'll discuss about association, inheritance, and polymorphism, and then we will move on to our other topics like class diagram. ඒව කරන්න වෙලා ඇත්තටම වෙලා යන්නේ හරි. ඇත්තටම වෙලා යන්නේ class diagram එකක් එකක් මට පැයකින් උනන් දැන් explain කරන්න පුළුවන් මේව දන්න කෙනෙක්ට. හරි. මොකද එතනට යන්න ඕන කතන්දර අපි කතා කරලා ඉවරයි දැන්. හරි. Right. So let's move on to data structures and algorithms. So I will first explain you the syllabus and the objective of this subject. Data structures and algorithms. So in this subject, there are two main objectives. One objective is make you familiar with some of the widely used data structures and algorithms. Right. So that you will be learning something like list data structure, tree data structure, map data structure, right? Then graph data structure, and so on. Stack and queue data structures. Okay. Familiarize with some commonly used data structures. So these data structures have some usages. We can use those data structures in solving problems to make that algorithm easier. Okay. So that is one objective. And of course, some algorithms. Algorithms means logic. Some algorithms of how to search something, how to sort a set of data. Say you are given something like 50, 30, 90, 40, and 80. So they will ask, can you sort these numbers? And ascending order. 89. Make කරන්න විදියක් ඔයාලට හිතන්න ඕනද logic එක. කොහොමද මම මේක කරන්නේ? Of course, if you think now sorting algorithm කරලා නැහැනේ. Now if you keep thinking, now it's a very good exercise. Maybe after the class, you take your Java. Right? Take your Java, NetBeans or IntelliJ or whatever. Write a method. So I'll give you the structure of the method. Say you are getting int array. Say there's a method called sort. For that you are getting int array. Let's call it data. And you are returning another int array. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ array එකම sort කරලා දෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි තුමා return කරනවා another int array. Or you can make it the same array. So then you have to write this method. So when someone call the sort method with array containing say 10, 90, 40, 30, you are supposed to return the return array must have 10, 30, 40, 90. දැන් කල්පනා කරොත් එමාට ටිකක් වෙලා කල්පනා කරනකොට මේකට solution එකක් එනවා. But it must be able to sort any array. Any number of elements can be there. It can be 10 elements, 100 elements, or 1000 elements. Because you are not giving a size here. It's just array. So therefore, your solution must be general solution such that whatever the array you are getting, you are sending the sorted array. දැන් ඔයා මේක දැන් හිතන්න පටන් ගත්තොත් එහෙම සමහර විට ඔයාලට පුළුවන් වෙයි පැයක් ඇතුළත හරි විනාඩි 10ක් ඇතුළත හරි පැය භාගයක් ඇතුළත හරි සමහරට අදත් හිතලා හෙටත් හිතලා පස්සේ හෙට හවස් වෙද්දී ඔයාලට සොලියුෂන් එකක් එයි. සමහරට ඒක ඉම්ප්ලිමන්ට් කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන්. Maybe it work. Maybe some in the first attempt you will get some errors. So you are not getting the correct array. When you print, you can again print in the for loop එක දාලා print කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන්. Obviously, it is doable if you have done your semester 1 programming properly and if you are a logical thinker. This is not a rocket science. Right? මේක sort කරන එක. ඉතා ඇත්තටම මොකද විනාඩි 5කින් වාට කරන්න පුළුවන්. Within 5 minutes there you can get a logic. Okay. So but what we will be doing is we will tell you some specific approaches in sorting. ඔයාගේ හිතට එන එකට අමතරව සමහරවිට අපි වෙන වෙන approach ටිකක් කියනවා. මේ විදිහට sort කරමු, මේ විදිහට sort කරමු, bubble sort, merge sort, quick sort, so that you get more and more ideas. And they will then of course we will compare what are the pros and cons of this algorithm. Right? So what are the differences between merge sort and quick sort? What are the pros, cons? So then you will identify that when it comes to complex problems, there's nothing called one solution. There are multiple solutions. So as designers, our task is see whether we can get the best solution. So best solution means it's a correct solution and it take less resources and it's very fast. So as software engineers, we must try to give the best solution. Okay. So in order to do that, we will teach you few algorithms as a starting point. And also using those things, we will explain how to compare algorithms, analyze those algorithms to find the better one, and so on, right? So some data structures, some algorithms. So algorithms, we will look at only two algorithms, search algorithms and sort algorithms. It doesn't mean that those are the only algorithms in the world. But in a syllabus, we can't look at all the algorithms, right? As software engineers, then and there, you have to develop those algorithms. So therefore, this is just to give you some, we take those algorithms as a reference to teach you few concepts, problem solving. Okay, so therefore, at the end, you will learn few data structures, you will learn few algorithms, which are handy. So knowing that there's a data structure called tree, there's a data structure called heap, there's a data structure called linked list is really handy, because you can use that in real world problem solving. Knowing that there are some specific sorting algorithm, searching algorithm is really handy, because you may use it. Code එක ලියන්න ඕනේ නැත්නම් search එකක් දාලා quick sort එකේ code එක අරගෙන ඔයා පාවිච්චි කරන්න. That is perfectly okay. Right. So software developers don't write sorting algorithms. They just copy paste sorting algorithms. They are just they know what are the sorting algorithms available. So therefore you get that competency, okay, at the end of this subject. So you will learn few data structures and common use algorithms. That is objective number 1. But the second objective is the real objective. The most important objective is not the first objective of course, that is also important. Second objective is, while you are learning these data structures and algorithms, you will get more and more familiar with how to solve problems. Because using these data structures and algorithms, in the exams also, you will get some questions where you have to use those in a clever manner to solve different problems. So that exposes you to problem solving. In the very first day, when we start doing programming in semester 1, I told you that software development is problem solving. So if you want to be a software developer, you must be a really talented problem solver. So while you learn these data structures and algorithms, you will expose to more and more techniques of problem solving, or you will be getting more and more familiar with problem solving, so that when you get to your real world problems, as part of the inventory management system, student management system, banking systems, you are in a better position because you have some experience, exposure. You know the thinking behind problem solving, coming up with solutions. So that is the second purpose of the subject. And the second purpose is actually the main purpose. Okay, main purpose. Okay, right. Keep that in mind. So therefore, don't just concentrate on these data structures and algorithms and try to memorize these things. It doesn't work. What you carry to your career is that experience, that exposure on how to solve problems when a problem is given. And of course, you can use these concepts as part of solving the problem. Okay. Right. So now let's look at the syllabus. ඔයාට ඉස්සර සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක ගැන හරියට දැනගන්න මොකද්ද මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක, ඇයි මේ සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක ඉගෙන ගන්නෙ. ඊට පස්සේ තනියම ඉගෙන ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ හරියට මයින්ඩ්සෙට් එක තියෙන කෙනා, අවංකව ඉගෙන ගන්න කෙනා. හරි, හැමතිස්සෙම අවංකව ඉගෙන ගන්න විතරක් නෙමෙයි ක්ලාස් එකේ ඉන්නේ. හරි, ඒක අපි 100%ක් දන්නවා. 100%ක් දන්නවා. හරි, ඉගෙන ගන්න අයගෙන් 100%ක් ඉගෙන ගන්න මේ තමන් හැකියාවන් දියුණු කරගෙන, ඵලදායීතාව වැඩි කරගෙන ලෝකෙට වැඩ කරන්න නෙමෙයි. ලෝකෙට බරක් නැතුව ජීවත් වෙන්නේ. සමහරව ඉගෙන ගන්නෙම සමාජයට බරක් වෙන්න. සමාජයට බරක් වෙන්න. සමහරව ඉගෙන ගන්නෙම තමන්ගේ තියෙන ලොකුකම පෙන්නන්න. එහෙමයි ඉන්න ඕන තරම්. අපි දන්නවා ඉගෙන ගත්තේ මොන හේතුවද කියලා අපි කියනවා වගේ. ඔයත් එක ආශ්‍රය කරනකොට අපි කියන හරියට සමහර කියනවානේ අපිට මට ඩිග්‍රියක් කරන්න ඕනම එහෙම කියලා. සමහරට යාළුවොත් කියනවා එහෙම. හරි. සමහරට අපි කියනකොටම දන්නවා මොකටද ඩිග්‍රිය කරන්න කියලා. හරි. මු සමහරට හොඳ තව ටිකක් වැඩියෙන් හොරකම් කරන්න තමයි මු මේ ඩිග්‍රිය කරන්නේ. උඩ පෝස්ට් එකට ගිහිල්ලා. අපි දන්නවා සමහරගේ ඇටිටියුඩ්. සමහරවල් අපි දන්නවා මුට තව ඉගෙන ගන්නවා හදන්නේ මේකට තව හොඳට මේ ජොබ් එක කරන්න. තව ඊට වඩා කොම්ප්ලෙක්ස් දේවල් කරන්න තමයි මේ ආසාවට මේක ඉගෙන ගන්න. පොඩි එකෙක්ගෙන් අහුවත් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් එයාගෙන් චරිතය දන්නවනම්. හරි, එයා වාස්තය කරලා තියෙනවා නම්, පෞල් පසුබිම දන්නවනම්, විශේෂ අමල තාත්තලාගේ හැසිරීම ගැන දන්නවනම් අපි දන්නවා මේක ඉගෙන ගන්න මොකටද කියලා. හරි. අමල තාත්තලාත් අහද්දි අපි අමල තාත්තලාගේ පසුබිම දන්නවනම් අපි දන්නවා උගන්වන්නේ මොකටද කියලා. උගන්වන්නේ හොඳ හොරෙක් කරන්නද නැත්නම් සමාජයට බරක් නැතුව ජීවත් වෙන කෙනෙක්. So you kind of have that, whatever your objectives you can keep, but I just explain you the genuine objectives. Okay, right. So these are the subtopics. Introduction to data structures. Then we will look at some data structures like arrays, linked list, a stack data structure, a queue data structure, tree data structure, graph data structure. So those are different data structures. That means we are giving you more and more weapons for your problem solving. So you can use these weapons, you can use these data structures as part of solving your problem. සමහර ඒවට මේ data structure එකට දාපු ගමන් problem එක solve කරන්න easy. Solution එකට අක් ගාලා වට පේනවා. Data structures දන්නේ නැති කෙනෙක්ට problem එක හරි complex. Okay. So then we will learn two algorithms, sorting algorithms and searching algorithms. Just two. Right? As a tool to understand developing algorithms, okay. Sorting and searching algorithms. So then we learn a programming technique called recursion. This is not something new. We discussed that in semester 1 also. A method calling itself is called recursion. So that concept can be used to solve some problems. It's not a solution to all the problems. Some problems can be solved in a very smart way when we use recursion. So therefore, we will look at recursion again. And we will discuss some problems that you can solve easily using recursion. That is a programming technique. And other topic is analysis of algorithm. I told you that when there's a problem, there's nothing called this is the solution. There can be so many different solutions. The more complex the problem, the larger the number of possible solutions. So then your task is come up with the best solution. That is where we do the analysis of algorithms. Of course, if it is your best, if you are looking for the best solution, number one is it must effective. Effective means does the work. It does the work properly. If it is sorting algorithm, it must return you the sorted data. If it is not returning sorted data, of course, that is not effective. No point looking at it anymore, or you have to fix it. So if it is effective, so the number two is there maybe you have this solution, all three are effective. All three does the work. And we want to pick the best one. So when you pick the best one, when it is effective, in software development, what we use is we look at the efficiency. So efficiency means what is the fastest, right? Fastest. So because we want to get things done faster. And another criteria is which approach take the least amount of resources like memory, processing power. So those are the two things we consider when we analyze the algorithm. So fastest and take least resources. Sometimes we have to look at both. Sometimes we are only interested in which one is the fastest. Okay, so that is what there are techniques like big O notation, right? O squared algorithms, log2n algorithms, and so on. And again, we will be looking at those algorithms we discussed during the these topics as a reference to see which algorithm is better than the other one, what are the process and cons of this algorithm versus that algorithm, and so on. Right. So now I hope you have a big understanding about what is this subject is. සමහරුන්ට මේ subject එක ගොන්නවම තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ subject එක මොනවද තියෙන්නේ. Subject එක ඉගෙන ගත්තයි කියලා දන්නේ නැහැ සමහරු. සමහරු හිතන් ඉන්නේ මේකේ මේ මේ පොඩි data structure ටිකුයි algorithm ටිකුයි ඉගෙන ගත්ත කියලා. Right. So now I hope you know what you are supposed to get at the end of this subject. Okay. Right. So again, I have uploaded the first few notes to the Google Classroom. Where is that? Right. So the introduction to data structures and algorithms, arrays, linked list, I have uploaded. Others we have not uploaded yet. Okay. Meka tam upload karna hai. Hash tables, analysis of algorithms. So that means I have not enabled. Okay. Trees, graphs, searching and sorting algorithms, and so on. And these are some external links for simulations. Right. So we'll start with introduction to data structures and algorithms. That is your topic number 1. Okay. That is your topic number 1, introduction to data structures. Okay. So then we will move on to arrays. And if you have time, we can even move to linked list. Okay. මේක එච්චර අමාරු සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකක් නෙමෙයි. හැබැයි මේක හරි පැත්තෙන් අල්ල ගන්න ඕන. සබ්ජෙක්ට් එක වැරදි විදිහට කටපාඩම් කරන්න ගියොත් එම මල විකාරයක් වෙනවා. හරි අන්තිමට ඔයත් මල විකාරයක් වෙනවා. හරි. මේවා කටපාඩම් කරන්න පටන් ගන්න. හරි සෝටින් සමහර කටපාඩම් කරනවා. සෝටින් ඇල්ගොරිතම් කටපාඩම් කරනවා. තේරුම් ගන්න නැහැ මෙලෝඩියක්. ඒකට පිස්සෙක් වෙන්න අතර තියෙනවා. හරි ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් කටපාඩම් කරලා. So introduction to data structures and algorithms. Access නැති අය මට මැසේජ් වගේක් දාලා මම ඒක ක්ලාස් එකෙම මට ආයි ක්ලාස් එකක් තියෙනවා හවස් වරුවේ. පුළුවන් වුණොත් ලන්ච් බ්‍රේක් එකේ බලන්න නැත්නම් ක්ලාස් එක ඉවරලා තමයි බලන්න වෙන්නේ. Access නැති අය කියලා. Right. Introduction to data structures and algorithms. So we will look at what is a data structure, what is an algorithm, what are the use of data structures and algorithms, and some other benefits of learning data structures and algorithms. So that is your topic number 1. Okay. Right. So what is a data structure? A data structure. Now remember, when you are doing programming, whether structured or object-oriented, we have to keep the data. In structured, we keep data separately and processing separately. In object-oriented, the data is kept inside objects. If you have a count object, your instance variable, class variable are data. And when you are calling a method, inside method also you can have data, local variables. So therefore, whether it's structured or object-oriented, data is there. Only thing is where the data. Here data is your variables separately. Here your data is instance variable, class variable, local variable. Okay. So then what is mean by data structure? So you can keep those data in a different structures. For example, you know that there's something called data type. So we have simple variables. So that is what we use in semester 1 at the beginning. Say int x. So you know that your x can keep value like 50. Or later you can say x plus plus. That means your variable can keep only one data, one value, integer value, like 10 minus 5. Or you can go for something like double. Then of course you know that you can keep decimal values also, like maybe char, boolean, then true or false value. So those are simple variables. You can keep just one value of particular data type, very simple data type. So then you have composite variables. So this is simple variable. You can have composite variables. මොනවද ඉගෙන ගත්ත composite variables ඔයගොල්ලෝ semester 1 වල? Anyone? What are the composite variables you learn in semester 1? Composite or compound. So actually those are little bit of data structures. Actually they are data structures. So you learn about
arrays.
Yes, arrays. Another one? So you learn about collection framework. Collection. So there you learn list, set, map. Right? So you can have. So those are also variables, right? Now, when we say data structures, usually we refer to these composite things. Right? Of course, simple variable is also data structure, but it's just a memory location, right? Yeah, we can keep a data value. But when we say data structures, usually we mean these composite things. Right? Arrays, collections, and so on. Then someone will ask, why do you need data structures? Why do you need data structures? So one reason is we want to keep multiple data in a single variable. So that is very good example is array. An array can keep multiple data. It can be single dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension. So that is a data structure, array structure. Maybe a collection, right? You can say list, say L1 equal new array list. So then you can say L1 dot add 5 and so on. You can remove, you can see what is the value. So now you can see that one variable can keep multiple data, array, list, and so on. So those are data structures. So data structure does two things. Of course, let's not take these as data structures because they are just primitive variables like arrays, collections. One thing is it can keep multiple data, not just one data. You can keep multiple data, maybe 10 data elements in the single variable. That is one use. Of course, the main or the only use of arrays is that just keep the data. But these data structures can do another thing. Of course, while it keeping the data, multiple data, it can keep these data in a very specific manner. It can keep those data in a multiple data in a specific manner. So that is where the different data structures have different usages. You can keep it as a list. You can keep it as a array. You can keep it as a tree. Binary tree. Or you can keep the data as a map. So then someone will ask, why do you want to keep your data like this or just like an array? And because in some cases, in real world problems, when you put it into a tree or map or graph, it make more sense. It represents the real world more. For example, think of a Google map. So there are paths, right? I want to go from Dehiwala to Maharagama. So either you can go from Dehiwala to Boralaskamu and Maharagama, or you can go from Dehiwala to how do you call it? Vellavatta, then Nugegoda, and from Nugegoda to Maharagama. Right. So then Maharagama to Homagama. So how do you keep those data? How do you keep those different paths? So if you keep these things, towns, in an array, it does not keep these paths. Of course, you are keeping the towns, but it doesn't represent that there's a path between this to this, this to this, this to this. But if you put it into a map, sorry, not a map, graph data structure, we not only having these data, we have modeled that there are connection between these. So there are roads or paths between these. So therefore, in this kind of when you are developing this kind of a software, like something to do with the transportation, better use a graph data structure. And there are some situations you don't need a graph. Maybe what you need is a stack. First in, first out. Or what you need is a queue. So likewise, different data structures help us model different real world problems as well, while keeping multiple data. So therefore, it is not just keeping multiple data. It is keeping multiple data in a specific structure. So why specific structure? For different problem solving, different structures will work, will be more helpful. Okay. So that is why we are going to learn about different data structures. And something like a primitive variable or array is a not abstract data structure. Abstract data structure means rather than thinking of how it is implemented, right? Rather than thinking of how it is implemented, we look at the features of that data structure, the way it is organized, and when you organize it, what are the things we can do? What are the things we can do? So that is what is meant by abstract data. Remember, abstract means what? We take the minimum essential. We forget about the implementation. We just think about the minimum essential things. So abstract data structure means rather than you think about how the map is implemented, how the binary tree is implemented, you look at it as a data structure and try to understand if you have a data structure like binary tree, what are the things that we can take it from there? Can we build some concepts on that? So we learn those concepts without worrying too much about how it is implemented. Of course, implementation is also we are doing, but we look at the features of a binary tree, features of a binary heap, features of a stack, the differences between stack and queue as abstract concept. And therefore, we can call them abstract data structures as well. So all these data structures we learn, they are abstract data structures. Other than array. Array is just you are looking at the memory in a specific manner. Right? It has no very special meaning or structure. Right? But anyway, we'll be starting with array, but array is sort of an extension to the simple variable. Okay. But we'll be more interested about the abstract data structures. Right? Abstract data structures. Because each abstract data structure has its own properties, its own behaviors, right? And so on. And the different techniques to manipulate and so on. Okay. Right. So these are some abstract data structures. Of course, arrays, if you want, you can take it, but some people just take array as a non-abstract structure as well. But if you want, even you can think that array is also having a bit of properties. So other than that, we have the linked list, stack, queue, right? Hash table, binary tree, graphs, and so on. So for our ease of understanding, we can subdivide. So how do you classify those data structures? Linear data structures, non-linear data structures, and other structures. Okay. Then within the arrays arrays primitive structure. So linear means they are related. These data elements are related in a linear manner. Line එක තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ ඉන්නේ. right? ඒකට දැන් develop කරගෙන කතා කරනකොට තේරෙයි ඔය line එක වල තමයි ඉන්නේ කියලා. හරි. මේ data අතර පොඩි සම්බන්ධයක් තියෙනවා. මේ data නිකම්ම data නෙමෙයි. මේ data එක මේකට සම්බන්ධයි. මේක මෙයාට සම්බන්ධයි. හැබැයි line එකක් විතර සම්බන්ධයි. So then we call it linear data structure. Right? So very good example is a list or stack or queue. අර පේනවා මේක line එකක් වගේ තමයි data ටික තියෙන්නේ. Right? If you want, you can even take array. Okay. But there are some data structures, they are not like a line. Right? Straight line විදියට නෙමෙයි තියෙන්නේ. අපි කියනවා non-linear data structures. ඒවා පැතිරෙනවා මෙහෙම. Say binary tree or graph. So you will understand the difference between tree and graph later, okay? But definitely they are not linear. ඒවා line එකක තියෙන data නෙමෙයි. So those are called non-linear data structures. And there are some other special data structures like hash table. So they have very special usages. We can't say those are linear or non-linear because that data structure is used for a different purpose. And every data structure has its own purpose or set of purposes. Every data structure has its pros and cons. Okay. So the place where you have to use binary tree, don't use a graph. The place where you are supposed to use a stack, don't use a queue. So some problems can be modeled using stack, other one using queue. Okay. Linear, non-linear, and special data structures. Okay. Abstract data structures. Right. So now let's look at what is an algorithm. So algorithm is basically a logic that you propose to solve the problem. So basically algorithm is also program. So when you write it in a programming language, you call it program. But when you write the logic without referring to a programming language, it's not a program that you run it, but later you want to make it to a program. But you don't think about any programming language, you just write the solution, maybe pseudocode or whatever. You just give the solution. So then we say that we have algorithm. Okay. And of course, your algorithm may refer to some data structures as well. Right. Your algorithm may refer to some special data structures or may not refer to special data structure. Okay. But it does a well-defined task, like a sort data, search a particular value, traverse values in a specific way, and so on. Right? So these are some popular algorithms. It doesn't mean that these are the only algorithms. Searching algorithm, sorting algorithm, traversing algorithm. There are optimization algorithms. So after that algorithm is executed, the things are organized in optimized manner. So the engineers ප්‍රධාන කාර්යය තමයි මොකද්ද? තියෙන දේවල් ඔප්ටිමයිස් කරලා දෙන එක. ඔහේ වෙන දේවල් හොඳම විදියට කරලා දෙන එක. right? ඔප්ටිමයිස් කරනවා. Right. I told you that a good algorithm must be effective and efficient. ඔකට අපි productive කියන්නේ. Productive කියන්නේ effective, efficient. හොඳ හරි දේ කරනවා, හොඳම විදියට කරනවා. So effective means it solve the problem. It gives you the correct result. Efficient means take less time, it take less resources, and so on. So that you have to decide which one is more important, time or resource, or both. But basically, the main idea is time and resource. Time and resource. Okay. Right. So that's it about introduction to data structures and algorithms. Okay. Now we are moving to our second topic, arrays and linked lists. So we take it as two separate topics. So we take arrays first, then we can go to the linked list. Okay. The note is again available. විනාඩි 5ක break එකක් කරන් කරනවා. විනාඩි 5යි. Now it's 11:10. We'll be starting at 11:08. We'll be starting at 11:15. අපි විනාඩි 15ක් විතර අරගෙන මේක කරමු. මොකද arrays කරලා තියෙන්නේ ඕගොල්ලෝ. ඕගොල්ලෝ තේරෙනද මේ ගොඩක් ඒවා කරපුවා ආයේ එනවා. මම කිව්වා පටන් ගත්ත දවසේ මේක BIT හරියට කරන අයට මෙහෙමයි යන්නේ. එන්න වල වැඩ අඩුයි. මොකද මේ කලින් කරපුවම තමයි ආයෙ ඕන වෙන්නේ. හැබැයි මේ කලින් කරපුවා බොරු කරපු කට්ටියට BIT මෙන්න මෙහෙම තමයි වෙන්නේ. කියලා අන්තිමට මේ හරියට යනකොට තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ හැලෙන්නේ. මේන් තමයි හැලෙන්නේ. හරි? හරියට කරපුවාට මෙතන දරා ගන්න බැරුව හැරිච්ච අය ඉන්නවා. ඒකයි මම කිව්වා පාඩම් කටපාඩම් කරන පේපර් එක දාපු වැරදි කියලා. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට දැන් මේවා එන්න පොඩි වෙනවා. ෆයිනල් යනකොට චූටි කතන්දරයක්. හරි? ජොබ් එක කරනකොට හොඳට hina වෙවි අතපය වනවන යනවා. ජොබ් එක කියන්නේ ඊට තුඩින්නේ. ඒ හරියට ඉගෙන ගන්න කට්ටිය සහ වරද්දලා ඉගෙන ගන්න කට්ටිය. කටපාඩම් කර කර බොරුවෙන් ඉගෙන ගන්න කට්ටිය. හරි? Right. So we'll be starting in 5 minutes. Okay? 11:10. So 11:15. Okay, so let's continue. Of course, we have done arrays. So then someone will ask why they have again put it into your syllabus. Okay, so that is part of your strategy. So that is actually that will make your workload less, right? Workload less because you are doing the same thing again. But the other thing is we look at it in a little bit more advanced manner, more serious manner. Okay, right? So what is an array? First of all, you must know what is a variable is. A simple variable. When you say something like int x, so later you can say x equal 10. Say print x, maybe x plus plus. Then again print x. So when this line is executed, what happens? Forget about the object-oriented for the time being, right? So this just assume this is in a method. So when this line is executed in your memory location is allocated, which is capable of keeping integer, right? Say 2 byte or whatever. So whenever you say x, it will refer to this particular memory address. That binding is kept at the runtime. So that is what happens when this line is executed. When second, still the value is not there, but the memory is allocated, which is capable of keeping integer in this case. So then this line is executed in that memory location. Now you have 10, of course it is in binary. And now that the value is there. Now when you say print x, whatever the value in this memory location, because whenever you say x, it is referred to this. If you have another variable y, whenever you say y, it is referring to another variable, memory location. Therefore, when you say print x, it will print the value in that memory location, which is 10. So therefore, output will be 10. Now you say x plus plus. Now this line is executed. So that means still you are referring to the variable x. Whatever the value in this memory location is now incremented by 1, and that value is saved. Now it has 11. Now when you say print x, it will print the value in this memory location, and because it's currently having 11, it will be 11. Right? It can be an int or double or float or char or whatever. Now what happens when you create an array? Say int x equal new int, say size of 3. Now what happens is when this line is executed in the memory, 3 memory locations are allocated. When you say x, of course you are referring to either this location, or this location. Consecutive memory location. එක ළඟ තියෙන memory locations තමයි apply වෙන්නේ. හරි? ළඟ තියෙනවා. Consecutive memory locations. Because the size is 3. And maybe this is 2 byte. ඇත්තටම එකක් කිව්වට මේක සමහරට එක byte එකයි නා අපි int take 2 bytes. So these 2 memory locations for the first element, so 0th element, and these 2 memory locations for the second element or first element, and these 2 memory locations for the second element. That means when you are creating an array, when you create an array, memory is allocated for this number of values. And okay, so therefore whether you refer to this or that or other one is determined by your index, say x0, x1, and so on. And array has nothing else. That is why I told you that array is a very primitive data type, data structure. So therefore, sometimes we don't take array as abstract data structure because it has no other meaning. It is just consecutive memory locations in the memory. Okay. There's no connection. For example, stack, queue, linked list, right? Tree, there are connection between these data, but there's no such thing. They are just consecutive memory locations. Okay. When it comes to array. And therefore, arrays are very efficient because it doesn't keep track of anything else. Very efficient way of keeping data. If your objective is just keep data and take it back, you don't have any other objective, the best data structure is array because it's highly memory efficient. Okay. Highly memory efficient and it does the work. Okay. Right. So I hope now you have an idea about arrays. Okay. So array can keep multiple values at a time. Multiple values, not just one value at a time. Maybe 10, 20, 18, 30 in one single array. And those values you can change later time. Individual values you can change. Okay. So using the index, 0th index, first index, second index, and so on. And the individual item is called element. Okay. And of course, you can create 1D arrays, 2D arrays, 3D arrays, and you can extend it to 4D, 5D, and so on. So 1D array has 1 index, 2D array has 2 indices, 3D array has 3 indices, and so on. Okay. So arrays are easy to use, simple to use, fast to access because they are consecutive memory locations. And also it use less resources like memory. So then someone will ask why it is taking less memory, because if it is a list or something, linked list or something, it is not only keeping the data, it is keeping track of what is the next data and so on. If it is a binary list or something, you have to keep track of this data, has to keep track of what are my next data. So that means it takes more memory resources. But arrays, they are just consecutive memory locations, and it's very efficient because it doesn't keep track of anything else. Okay. So therefore, when your only task is just keep set of data and take it back or retrieve or change it, arrays are the best. Array is the best option because it takes the least amount of memory and it's very fast. So as I told you, the array can be 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3-dimension, and even you can go for 4, 5, and so on. So the number of indices will increase. So how do you create array, work with array? Because you did this in semester 1, okay? So you declare array, create array, or you can combine these two together. So then you assign or modify values or retrieve values, or retrieve a specific value, or maybe you want to retrieve all the values in a particular order. Those are things you do. ඔය ටික තමයි අපි කරන්නේ අනිත් ඒවා structures වල. Queue data structure. How to create a queue, how to insert data in the queue, how do you take data from the queue, or any other operation that you can do with queue. So same thing for binary tree. How to insert data to the binary tree, how to take data from binary tree, how to search something in the binary tree, and are there any other specific things you can do with binary tree, right? And you know how to do these things, right? You know how to do these things. But remember, we will be using Java as our reference programming language. So therefore, especially arrays, there are small differences between different languages. Especially Java is strongly typed language. So therefore, when you create an array, you have to give the data type. But if it is something like Python, you don't have to do that because they are implicit type languages. And also when Java, arrays are objects, right? But in some other languages, arrays are not objects. So just, it's nice to know those things. And when you create an array in Java, you have to give the size. You have to say new int, say 5. But some other languages like Python, JavaScript, you don't have to give the size. Arrays, those arrays are growable. So later you can have, you just create array and you can have any number of data later. But in Java, if you create array with size 5, there's no 6th element. There's no way you can extend it to 6 elements. Okay. And of course, in Java, arrays are always index 0, 1, 2, 3. But there are some other languages, we can give whatever the index we want. For example, in PHP, there's something called associative arrays. You can just give whatever the name you want as the index. Right? The arrays can ඉගෙන ගන්නකොට පොඩ්ඩක් ඒවත් ඉගෙන ගන්න දැන්. So, but arrays are arrays. The concept is the same. Just consecutive memory locations are allocated. Okay. So in Java, you must know how to create an array, how to assign values, how to retrieve values, and so on. Okay. So this is how you create an array in Java. You have to give the size, or you can do this in 2 steps, like int x, and then you can say x equal new int. That is fine, whatever the way you want. ඒ වගේ අපි worry වෙන්නේ නැහැ මෙතන data structures and algorithm මේක programming subject එක නෙමෙයිනේ array හදන්න මේක syntax වැරදි තියනවාද ඒව බලන්නේ නැහැ exam එකේ දැන් බලන්නේ ඔයාලට array කියන concept එක ඔලුවට ගිහිල්ලාද කියන එක විතරයි semester 1 වල වගේ අර keyword එක හරියද මේ keyword එක වැරදිද වගේව බලන්නේ නැහැ. So then of course you can set values like this, 0th element, 1st element. Of course you can go up to 9th element. But if you try to go to the 10th element, you will get array index out of bound exception because the memory is allocated only for 10 elements. And of course, later you can retrieve the values and take it to a different variable, or you can print it and so on, right? The second approach is in Java, when you create the array, you can assign the values also. So there you don't have to give the size because size is implicitly, it can calculate the number of elements. It knows that number of element is 4. And modify and retrieve value is the same. Okay. Modify and retrieve value is the same. So any questions? දැන් මේවා නම් අපි කෝඩින් කරා. හරි. නමුත් අපි array අද ඉවර කරන්න ඕන හන්ද පොඩි කෝඩ් එකක් ලියමු. So I will be using IntelliJ. You can use whatever your favorite Java editor. Okay, I will be using IntelliJ free version, community edition. But if you are familiar with Eclipse or whatever, of course you can use. Let me create a new project, file, new project. This is IntelliJ. Next. Let's call it array demo. I will be sharing the code at the end. That's another mahal code that they never learned. ඊළඟ දවස්වල code set එකතු වෙනවා ඔයාලට. හරි. Stack coding, queue coding. මට coding උත් අහනවා හරි exam එකේ. coding කටපාඩම් කරන්න එපා. කටපාඩම් කරන්න බෑ ඇත්තටම. හරි කටපාඩම් කරන එක පිස්සෙක් වෙනවා. subject එක තේරිච්ච කෙනාට ඒ වෙලේ code එක හිතලා ලියන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් අයට කියන්නේ Java code or pseudo code කියලා. ඒතකොට Java code එක අහන්නෙත් නැහැ. pseudo code එක ලිව්වම ඇති. pseudo code එකට මතකෙන් නෙමෙයි ලියන්නේ නැත්නම් subject එක තේරුම් ගත්ත එක්කෙනාට දන්නවා stack එකක් කියන්නේ මේකයි stack එකේ කරන්න operations මේකයි. එයාට ඒ වෙලේ ලියන්න පුළුවන් code එක. හරි. Right, so let's create a Java class. I'll call it array demo. Say 1D array demo. හැබැයි මේ coding කරන්න හොඳට familiar වෙන්න ඕන. නැත්නම් කොහොමද final year project එක කරන්නේ? නැත්නම් කොහොමද IT කියලා මම software developer කෙනෙක් වෙනවා නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් coding කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. හරි? නැත්නම් ගිහිල්ලා වැඩක් නැහැ නේ coding කරන්න බැරි software developer කෙනෙක් වෙලා. Right. So we will not be using object oriented approach, right? We just use object oriented විදිහට තමයි ඔක්කොම model කරන්න ඊට පස්සේ stack එක queue එක array එකේ විතර object oriented පාවිච්චි නොකරන්න. So that is another thing. So your tree data structure will be a class where you can create three objects. So all the data structures other than array, because array is a built-in data structure. Array is not something we use, we build. It is available in the language. All the other data structures we will be building. Right? We will build a list data structure. We will build a stack data structure. So all those things we will be using object-oriented concept. Or we will build the data structure as a object class. ඒකයි object oriented උදේ කරෙත් ඒකයි හේතුවක්. object oriented විදිහට තමයි ඉස්සරහට ඔක්කොම data structures හදන්නේ. හරි? Right. So let's create the main method psvm. So let's create an array int. මම lazy විදිහට හදන්න data දාලම 1D array. Say 10 20 30. දැන් array එකක් iterate කරගන්නේ බැරි කෙනෙක්ට sorting algorithm එක ලියන්න බෑ. sort කරන්නේ තනිකර array එක ඇතුලේ තියාගෙන data එහාට මෙහාට දාලා sort කරනවා මේක. හරි? මෙයා අරගෙන මෙතන දාන array එකක් එක්ක වැඩ කරන්න බැරි කෙනෙක්ට sorting algorithm එක ලියන්න බෑනේ කොහොමද? ඒකයි ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේ arrays ආය අමතක නම් coding කරලා පොඩ්ඩක් මතක් කරලා දෙන්නේ. හරි? You have to do it by yourself parallelly. Right. So now okay අපි array එකක් වෙනම කලින් විදිහට හදමු සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට. Say new int the data type design component. Say 4 size 4. Now I can assign values. Say a0. Java arrays are always 0 base. Say 10. අද කරපු එක වචනයක් හරි තේරුම් නැත්නම් අහන්න ඕන. හරි ඒක ඔයාගේ වැඩක්. ඔයාගේ වගකීම් මට බාර ගන්න බෑ. හරි. මට කරන්න පුළුවන් වැඩේ මම කරනවා. ඔයා ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් එවුවොත් මම 18ම උත්තර දෙනවා. හරි හිතන්න මතක තියාගන්න. Zeroth element, first element, so second element, third element. Let's just assign values like 20, 30. Right, now the thing is, okay, let's print it. Say A0. And it will print 10. Okay, it will print 10. දැන් memory එකේ වෙන දේ හිතා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. හරි? First එක memory location එක 10 තියෙනවා, ඊළඟ එකේ 20 තියෙනවා, 30 තියෙනවා. දැන් අපි ඒකේ 0th element එක තමයි print කරන්නේ. Right? So that is of course obviously 10. And of course you can do any change to your data. Say A1. . say plus plus. Now what will happen? So say A1 is at this point 20, but now we have incremented it by 1. So we see this is 10. Now are we going to get 20 or 21? Right. So this is after doing the addition, incremented by 1, right? So it will be 21. Print කරන්න ඕනේ A1 වනේ. And of course, if you refer to a invalid variable, because this is size of 5, size of 4, that is 0 to 3, you can't have the fourth element now. There's nothing called fourth element. And this will give you something like a array index out of bound exception. Make කරන්න පුළුවන් අනිත් language වල. Dynamic ඒවා. හරි. Like JavaScript you can do this, but in Java this will give you array index out. දැන් sorting algorithm මෙහෙම ලියද්දි array index out of bound exception එකක් ආවොත් code එක ලියද්දි ඔයා දැනගන්න මොකද්ද වෙච්ච ප්‍රශ්නේ කියලා. හරි. Because this is a practical subject. So that is something. So the next thing is you must be able to iterate it, because that is something we heavily do. You know, almost all the other data structures we will be doing iterations. Iteration එකක් කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. So in Java language there are 2 ways to iterate. Approach 1. There's another approach, right? So we did this in semester 1. So the first approach is, let's use the normal for loop or while loop. Say index is integer. Say I equals 0. Let's start with the 0th element. As long as my I is less than, remember, don't hard code values in your algorithms. Your algorithm must be very general. So your iterate logic must work for whether it's a 4-item array or 10-item array or million item array. So whenever you write code, even code segments, make it very general. So therefore I don't hard code. I will say, because arrays are objects, it has a better attribute called length. As long as it is less than length, so length is 10 means we have 5 elements. And of course you have to increment it, right? That you know. Now I can use this to print it, right? SOUT. Say ith element of A. Print එක line එකේ print කරමු. Space එකක් දාලා. And at the end, let's take it to the next line. Better you now blank at them. So that iterate from 0th element to the 3rd element. Okay. A1 AI. Make comment කරේ නෑ. Now it's කලින් comment කරේ නෑ. And so this will print 10, 20, 30, 40. So that is one way of iteration. So second iteration approach is, in Java language, you know that there's an array friendly for loop and collection friendly for loop. So if they ask you to write Java code, or if you write a Java code, සමහරවිට කියන Java code එක ලියන්න කියලා. ඒකට ඔයාලට මොන loop එක පාවිච්චි කරත් කමක් නැහැ. හරි. උඩ තියෙන loop එක පාවිච්චි කරත් කමක් නැහැ. යට තියෙන loop එක පාවිච්චි කරත් කමක් නැහැ. If you write the Java code. ඒ exam එකේ නම් අපි කියන්නේ පුළුවන් තරම් pseudo code ම ලියන්න. Java code ලියනකොට ඔයාලට වරදින chance එකත් වැඩි, වෙලාවත් වැඩියෙන් යනවා. pseudo code ම ලියන එක හොඳයි. හරි. මේ වගේ iterate කරන්න ඒවා දෙන්නේ නැහැ. හරි ලොකු කතන්දර දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකත් මතක තියාගන්න. So this is the starting point. right? Say it's an int array, so therefore we need an int variable. You iterate the A array, which is individual elements will be integers. Now you can just print your X. And this is very simple approach. මෙච්චර දිගට ලියන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. ඉවරනම ඊළඟ line එක තල්ලු කරමු. So that will again print 10 to 40, right? 10 to 40. But this is much simple because it's a other for loop. Print එක දානවා. ඒවට පෙනේ අර හැම algorithm එකක් අස්සෙම for loop එක තමයි ගේම ගහන්නේ. For loop while loop එක. Okay. For example, I will show you තව ටිකක් කල් ගියාට පස්සේ දවස් 4ක් 5ක් යනකොට අපි ලියන කෝඩ් එකක් from last year batch. මේ for loop වලින්ම තමයි තනිකර ගේම් එක ගහන්නේ. For loop විශේෂයෙන් for loop වලින්. හරි. problems ඔය ඉතිවාර වෙන ඒ තැනන් වලත් අපි මේ loop පාවිච්චි කරනවා. මෙතන සරල loop එක පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙනවා. මෙතන අර දිග loop එක පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙනවා. මෙතන තෝරන සරල loop එක පාවිච්චි කරන් තියුණා. හරි. අපි තව එකක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම merge. This is test class. මේක recursion පාවිච්චි කරලා ලියලා. ඉතින් මේ හැමතැනම for loop එහෙම තියෙනවා. ඒක හන්ද අද ඉගෙන ගන්න කාට සැක තියෙනවා නම් array එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද array එකක් iterate කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා ඔන්න අද ඉවරයක් කරගන්න එක. හරි. Right, so those are the two approaches in iteration. So in this approach, you can iterate in whatever the way you want, from bottom to right to left or left to right or whatever. But this iteration always goes from left to right, from 0th element to the last element. Okay, right. So then we can extend this concept. Any questions on arrays? The arrays වලින් ඔතමයි කරන්නේ. arrays වලින් වෙනවට කරන්නේ නැහැ. We can extend into 2 dimension and 3 dimension. Okay, so let's create another class. And let's call it 2D array. array. So how to create 2D array? You can use this approach also, or you can use the other approach, curly bracket approach. I will use this approach, say 2 dimension. Okay. So you can create a square or rectangular shape array or odd shape array. So let's create a rectangular shape array. Say 3 rows. This is the number of rows. This is number of columns. Okay, say 4 rows, 3 columns. So this is a 4 by 3 array. Right? So this is a 4 by 3 array. The other class is not about arrays. Can you සැකයක් තියෙන්න බෑ හරි. ඒකට ඊළඟ දවසේ කරන list link list. ඒකට ඊළඟ දවසේ class එක කරනම link list ගැන සැකයක් තියෙනවා. එහෙම තමයි මේක දවසින් දවස යන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ stack queues කරනවා. So 4 rows, 3 columns. 0 1 2 3 0 1 2. Okay, so ඔන්නෝම array එකක් තමයි හැදුවේ. So then of course I can assign values. So you can use a curly bracket approach as well. අපි දිගේ විදියට හදමු. Say A 0 0. Say is 10. දැන් මම copy paste කරනවා. ඉතින් curly bracket එක හදන්න පුළුවන්. දිගේ විදියට හදමු. 12ක් තියෙනවානේ. So let's say 10, 11, 12, 13, or let's say 0, 1. So 0, 0, 0 1 0 0 0 1 0 2 1 0 1 1 2 2 2 3 3 3 0 1 2 0 1 2 1 2 1 okay. මේවම දාමු නම්බර විදියට හරි අපි අර කියමු 0 0 කියලා 0 0 එලිමන්ට් එකේ තියෙන 0 හරි නැත්නම් 0 0 0 එලිමන්ට් එකේ තියෙන 0 0 දෙකක් දාලා නැහැ නේ sorry දැන් 0 0 1 කියලා දැම්මම print වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද අපි යාට කියමු එහෙනම් 1 2 3 කියලා දාමු 4 5 6 7 8 සමහරව ඉන්නවා ෆයිනල් ඉයර් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එක කරද්දී ලූප් එකක් ටයිටරේට් කරගන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ 2D array එකක් මොකද data එන්නේ 2D arrays වල database එකෙන් database එකෙන් එනකොට record 4ක් ආවොත් 2D array එකක් සමහරට මේ 2D array එක iterate කරගන්න තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ අවාසනාවන්ත තත්ත්වයක් right so now I can iterate this array because I have the data like 1 2 3 4 5 6 and so on so there are two ways you can iterate again you can use array friendly for loop or the normal for loop let's use the normal for loop so you have to go for a nested for loop නේද මේක මහා දෙයක් නෙමෙයි coding දන්න අයට ඇස් එක පියාගෙන code එක ලියන so this one is going from one row to the other row say for so int I equals 0 because first one is the 0th row as long as I is less than so remember the length property will give you the number of rows not the number of columns because this is a row property so therefore it will be a dot length එකට වඩා අඩු වෙන්න ඕන right one shot ලියන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන of course I plus plus that iterate from first 0th row to the first row second row and so on now once you get into a row now I want to iterate the columns or the fields say int again it start with 0 දැන් අර ඉන්ඩිවිජුවල් එකේ length එක ගන්නවා මොකද ඒක වෙනස් වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් ඒක hard code කරන්න බෑ දැන් ඔයාලට 3ද 4ද කියලා කෝඩ් වල ජෙනරල් වෙන්නවා how to do that you can say ai ith rows length එයාට වඩා මෙයා j පොඩි වෙන්න ඕන මොන්න ඔහම හරියට එකපාර ලියන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන so j must be less than ith rows length a වෙල row එකේ length එක and of course j plus plus දැන් වැඩේ ඉවරයි දැන් අපිට print කරමු say I j ith row jth column so let's go for print therefore let's have space ඉවරුණාට පස්සේ අනිත් row එකට යන්න කලින් ඊළඟ එකට තල්ලු කරමු so this will print row by row it will be 1 2 3 then 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 okay let's run it so row by row we print element by element row wise so the other for loop is much easier how to do the second approach this is approach 1 second approach දැන් මේ loop තමයි අර වාසි ඊළඟ algorithm මාස්ටර් රින් ගන්න ඊට පස්සේ search කරලා තියෙනවා sort කරලා තියෙනවා right so it's easy, very easy, the second approach, because we use array friendly for loop. Now this array is a two-dimensional array. So each row is another array. Each row is an array now. Right? Each row is array. So therefore, this is not int now, it's an int array. Let's call it P. Right? So what you take is your A array. So your A array's first row will be here, then the second row, then the third row. So your P will be initially the 0th row, then the first row. First row is an array again, one-dimensional array. Then you have to iterate that array. This is very compact code. Now this P array you have to iterate, and individual element is an int value. Now we iterate the P array. Now I can print the value. Now it is just a queue. Let's print. You can see this one is very compact. Here I will force it to the next line. So this is again iterating the same array, and you will get the same output. Right? You will get the same output. So we iterate the two-dimensional array. Each row is a one-dimensional array, and that array is again iterated, taken to int variable. Right? So we must get the same output. You can see same output. First we use the normal for loop. Second time we use the compact for loop. And the good news is this work for odd shape arrays as well. Odd shape array එකට හරින odd shape array එකක් කිව්වේ note එකේ තියෙනවා මේ ටික හරි. අපිට මෙන්න මෙහෙම හදන්න පුළුවන්. මෙයාගේ element 3යි, මෙයාගේ element 2යි, මෙයාගේ element ආයි 3යි නැත්නම් 4යි ඔන්නෝම arrays හදන්න පුළුවන්. Either curly bracket approach or creating array as array of array. Okay. අපි array එකක් හදමු. මේකම වෙනස් කරනවා. Odd shaped array. Arrays ඊට පස්සේ. So if you go for this approach and create odd shape array, you have to keep this blank. You have to keep this blank. Okay? Because you have to create that separate. Then අපි A කියන පාවිච්චි කරලා ඉවරයිනේ. Let's call this B. Then you have to create these individually. Say B0 is another int array. Say අපි හිතමු මෙයාගේ තියෙන්නේ elements දෙකයි කියලා. තාම array එක හදනවා දැන් හදලා ඉවර නැත්නම්. New. This is 0th row, first row, second row. Third row. So let's say 2, 3, 2, 4, 1, and 3. Another 4. ඔන්න මගේ දැන් rows 4යි. පළවෙනි 0th row එකේ element 2යි, first row එකේ element 4යි, second row එකේ element 1යි, third row එකේ element 4ක් ආයි තියෙනවා. එහෙනම් දැන් මට මොනවද තියෙන්නේ? data 0 0 0 1. Okay. So then 1 0 1 1 1 2 1 3 is also there. 1 3. Then 2 0 only is there. 2 0. Then 3 0 to 3 0 to 3 0 3 1 3 2 3 3 එච්චරයි. 4ක් කියන්නේ 3 3 එක නිකන්. ඔන්න දැන් odd shape array එකක් හැදියා. The good news is these two for loops I am not hard coding, so this will work for that kind of odd shape arrays also. So that is the good news. ඒක අපි general code එකක් ලියන්න ඕන කියලා. දැන් odd shape array එකක් තියෙන්නේ. So I can use whatever the for loop to iterate this. මේක A නෙමෙයි අපි B කියලා ගත්තා. So it's all about your confidence. How confident are you about your code? So I'm using the same loop, but this time I'm working with B array, which is odd shape array, but I don't mind because my logic is general logic. Let's call this M, M, and N. This N. Right. Well, variable length උනාට එයා හරි length එක ගන්නවා මෙතන. හරි length එක ගන්නවා. ඒ row එකේ length එක හරියට ගන්නවා. මේක කොහොමත් හරියට යනවා. මෙහෙම ලිව්වට පස්සේ. Now let's run it. Now our array is an odd shape array. 2 elements, 4 elements, 1 element, again 4 elements. Okay. Run කරාම පෙනේ. එම්බුදේ. curly bracket එකක් වැඩි වෙනවා. curly bracket එක වහලා නැහැ නේ. This curly bracket එකක් උඩ පට වුණා. curly bracket එකක් අඩු වෙලා. දෙයක් අඩු වෙලා. One, two, one, method class. This is not needed. Format करना. Where is the format? Right. Format right. Right. So this must work exactly the way it works previous. Okay, you can see this is odd shaped array. Vedan tharudiyak දාලා ඉන්නවා. Right. You can see first that row has 2 elements, second row has 4 elements, third row has 1 element, fourth row has another 4 element, but still our for loop work. That is what software developers are supposed to do. You write the general code so that whether it's as long as it is a 2D array, this code work. Only prerequisite is send me a 2D array. Right? But ඔයාගාව magic number තියුණා මේක 5ද 4ද එතකොට ආයේ කියන size එක array එකට විතර වැඩ කරන්නේ. But this I am pretty sure whether it's a rectangular shape or odd shape, I don't mind. This for loop work, right? This for loop work. So that is what you are supposed to do when you write algorithm. It must work whether you get 10 elements or 100 elements. Okay, it must work. So therefore, don't assume that your array is this size and that size and so on. Your code must be general code, right? Either this way or that is why I'm using the length property. හරි A row එකේ length එක අනුව වෙනස් වෙනවා. ඒ පළවෙනි row එකේ length එක 2යි, දෙවෙනි row එකේ length එක 4යි කියලා අපිට අවුලක් නැහැ. Still this work. So when you write code, make sure you write general code, not something the most maintainable general code you can write. Okay, right. So basically I explain you what can you do with arrays. So arrays වල ඔච්චර තමයි කරන්නේ ආ. So 2D array එකක් නම් so it can be rectangular array like this or odd shape array like this. මේක මේ විදිහට හදන්න නැතුව අපිට මෙහෙම හදන්නත් තිබුණා. හරි. මෙච්චර දඟලන්නේ නැතුව මෙහෙම හදන්නත් තිබුණා. හරි. මම ඉතින් අර මේ විදිහට කරේ දිග විදිය කරලා පෙන්නනවා. මේක ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේකත් වැඩ කරනවා කියලා දන්නවනේ. ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරන්නේ semester 1 වල. Then of course you can use either this kind of for loop, right? Make sure you go for the length property so that your code logic is very general, or you go for this kind of a array friendly for loop, which always work for the variable length or whatever. Okay, right? So those are the things you must know. Of course, arrays, they don't have any other features. They're just keeping the data so that you can take it back. Okay, therefore it's very efficient, but it doesn't have any other thing. Another issue with Java arrays is when you create an array, the size is fixed. If you say array size is say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if you want to add a sixth element or another element, there's no way to do that. එහෙම මොනවද මොකද කරන්න වෙන්නේ දැන්? JavaScript Python වල මේක ආයි තව එලිමන්ට් එකක් assign කරනවා. 6 වෙනි එලිමන්ට් එක කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද size එකක් කියන්නේ නැහැ. But in Java this is not allowed. So the only option is you create another array with bigger array and you copy each and every element. ඔන්න ඔක දැනට කරන් තියෙන එකම solution එක. Java වල. හරි. Because arrays are not but that is not the issue with array. That is the issue with Java arrays, the way Java implemented. Okay. But in general, in most of the languages, you don't have that problem because in most of the other languages, dynamically you can expand arrays. Okay. Here then in on programming language specific. Right. So that's it. So we did the first topic. Right. We did the first topic. So not only the first topic, actually the part of the second topic also. මම කියන්නේ මේවට යන්න යනවාට වැඩ අඩු වෙනවා කියලා මම ඒක පළවෙනි මම හිතන්නේ semester 1 class ආපුවාට මම පළවෙනි දවසේ orientation එකේදී මම කිව්වා ඔයාලට වැඩ අඩු වෙනවා එන්න එන්න. ඒකන්ද පළවෙනි semester එක ඉතාම මහන්සි වෙන්න කියලා. හරි. දැන් ඔයාලට තේරෙන්න ඇති. මේකෙන් දැන් ඔන්න මේක ඇලත් ඉවරයි. So then we go for the linked list and so on. Okay. Right. So we stop at this point. So next week, most probably we will be starting the other two subjects, maybe web and database, or maybe one of those and communication skills. So don't take communication skills lightly. If you fail communication skills, of course, you can't go to the level 3 in this year. More than that, communication skills is very important right now. You know that most of you guys are not talking. So that means there are two reasons for not talking. One reason is you think that your communication skills are not good. කතා කරන්නත් බැරි නම් communication skills topic එකට ඉන්නත් බැරි නම් ඉතින් වෙන ඒකට කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ නේ. ඒක ඉතින් කරුමනේ. කතා කරගන්නත් බෑ. හැබැයි ඒක ඉගෙන ගන්න උවමනාවකුත් නැහැ සමහරුන්ට. හරි. ඒක එක හේතුවක්. අනිත් හේතුව තමයි කතා කරාම සමහරු හිතනවා තමන්ගේ මෝඩකම එළියට එයි කියලා. සමහරු හිතන් ඉන්න තමන් හරි මෝඩයි කියලා. එහෙම හිතන් ඉන්න කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා. ඒක හිතන් ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් මෝඩද නැද්ද කියලා ඕගොල්ලෝ තමයි දන්නේ. ඒකට සමහරු හිතන් ඉන්නවා කට ඇරියොත් මගේ මෝඩකම එළියට එයි කියලා. ඒගොල්ලෝ කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. එකක් තමයි වට confidence එන්න ඕනේ. ඒක නෙවෙයි logic එක කියන්නේ semester 2 maths paper එකක් කරේ හොඳ maths paper එකක් ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. quantifiers නේද? predicates, arguments. ඉතින් තාමත් මෝඩයි කියලා හිතනවාද? ඒ paper එකත් පාස් වෙලා. ඒ paper එක පාස් වෙච්ච කෙනෙක් ලේසියෙන් මෝඩෙක් නෑ. හරි ඒක ඉතාලම ලොජිකල් පේපර් එකක් කරේ ඉතින් එහෙම බොරුවට හිතන් ඉන්න බා මෝඩයි කියලා අපි ඔක්කොට මිස්ටේක්ස් වෙනවා ඒක ඉගෙන ගන්න එන්නේ අනිත් අතට කමියුනිකේෂන් ස්කිල්ස් හදා ගන්න ලීඩර්ෂිප් ස්කිල්ස් අපි අතර මෙතන ගන්න කමියුනිකේෂන් ස්කිල්ස් නෙමෙයි ඔයාගේ ලීඩර්ෂිප් ස්කිල්ස් ඉනිෂියේටිව් ස්කිල්ස් ටීම් වර්ක් ස්කිල්ස් ඒවා ගැන කතා කරන්නේ හරි ඔයාගේ පර්සනැලිටි ඩෙවලොප්මන්ට් ගැන කතා කරන්නේ හරි සිලබස් එක බලමු තේරෙයි ඒක අතන කමියුනිකේෂන් නෙමෙයි තියෙන්නේ ඔයාගේ තියෙන professional skills ගැන කතා කරන්නේ හරි right we stop at this point so those who haven't got the Google Classroom access, please send me a message. Of course, those who send me the message, I will have a look at it. Maybe after the afternoon class, because I have another class. I have another class in the afternoon, and there's another class in the evening. Maybe Monday morning, I will have a look at it. Okay, right. We stop at this point. Right. Thank you.